The story begins by revealing that Gray had become the most powerful king in the world. However, without warning, his life comes to an end, and he is reborn in a medieval world. As soon as he opens his eyes, still a baby, he is met with two smiling faces, his new parents. Their gaze overflows with affection and happiness. Both comment on how the newborn son looks like them, and they do not hide their excitement over the arrival of little Arthur. Reynolds, the father, immediately decides to call him Arthur and tries to make the baby call him Dad. Alice, the mother, finds it amusing, but reminds her husband that the boy is still too young for that. While the two play with their son, Arthur observes them with suspicion. He does not understand who those people are or why they are so sure they are his parents. If what they say is true, it means he really died and is now living another life, but with all the memories of the previous one. Lying down, he tries to accept that even after winning countless battles and conquering everything, he now finds himself trapped in a fragile and incapable body. This situation makes him extremely uncomfortable, especially when he has to do something so simple and at the same time so embarrassing like burping. Despite this, Arthur does not feel anger toward the life he has now. His new parents take care of him with dedication, but even so he does not feel completely at ease. He does not like the idea of wearing diapers and lives with a constant feeling that he might be in danger. His only defensive instinct is to clench his fists tightly. Reynolds notices this and has fun placing his finger in his son's hand, thinking the grip is a sign of affection. As he tries to move and squeeze the finger harder, Arthur ends up overdoing it and soils himself, causing Alice to have to clean him. He feels so embarrassed that he almost cries. He wishes he could believe that everything was just a strange dream. But he already understands that this is the reality he will have to deal with from now on. Amid all this, something unexpected happens. Arthur witnesses his father using magic to increase his strength. Later, he also sees his mother using magic to heal him. This leaves him deeply intrigued, since in his previous life he had never come into contact with anything like it. He wants to understand how magic works, but knows that he still needs to grow for that. Shortly after, Reynolds enters a forest and defeats a beast with the help of magic. Then, he is visited by some friends, who, later in the story, will have important roles. Meanwhile, Arthur, still unable to do much, observes everything around him, absorbing every detail. For him, knowledge has always been a powerful weapon, and now it would be no different. When Reynolds returns from the hunt, Arthur wonders if he is now in a place where people live armed. If so, this world is probably much more dangerous than it seems. He comes to the conclusion that he needs to find a way to obtain power as soon as possible if he wants to survive and adapt. He still has many questions he cannot ask, but despite that, he begins to find joy in simple moments with his parents. In his old world, he could not even sleep in peace. Someone was always trying to take his life. Now, living with safety and affection, he begins to get used to the new reality. Time passes, and after several days or perhaps weeks and months, Arthur learns to crawl. Soon, he goes to a mirror to see what his face looks like. He gains more control over his body and begins to sneak out of the crib whenever his parents are not around. His favorite destination is the library. There, he picks up a curious book to learn more about that world. He discovers that he is on the continent of Dicathen, divided into 3 great kingdoms: Darv, where the dwarves live; Ilenoir, an elven kingdom hidden deep within the forest; and Sapin, the land of humans where he is now. He learns that this world is also ruled by a monarchy, but unlike the previous one, where the throne could be taken by force, here power is inherited. With this basic information, Arthur seeks to understand magic. He picks up a specific book on the subject, curious to know how everything works. As he reads it, he realizes how technologically superior his former reality was. The book explains that the magical energy of this world is called mana. Only 1 in 100 people is born with it, and this energy is passed down from generation to generation. There are 2 main ways to use it: augmentation, which improves physical capabilities, and conjuration, which allows one to create and manipulate mana externally. With this, Arthur understands that his mother is a conjurer. He also discovers that each person born with mana possesses a magical core, usually accessed during puberty. By mastering this core, a person can become a mage. For Arthur, the concept resembles the Kai he used before. He even tries to activate it. But at the moment he begins to concentrate, Alice picks him up, thinking he soiled himself. And she was right. While she changes him, he feels trapped inside such a fragile body, and reaffirms to himself that one day he will become strong again. Later, Alice writes down details of her son's development and shows satisfaction with his progress. But there is something that worries her. Arthur still has not smiled at them. Just thinking about it makes her heart tighten. As she looks out the window, she sees Reynolds trying to teach Arthur the basics of the sword. The father is excited about the progress, but Alice does not find it amusing at all. She becomes irritated upon learning that he is teaching something so dangerous to such a young child. Arthur watches the argument carefully, using the moment to try to better understand the relationship between men and women in this world. He even begins to wonder if their women have more power. Later, Alice takes him to the market, and Arthur is enchanted by everything he sees. Each new item seems like an opportunity to learn. Now he understands why babies tend to look around so much. In particular, he is fascinated when he sees magic being used in public. On the way back home, he begins to doze off. But before that, he mentally gives thanks for being by the side of such special people. Arriving home, Alice comments on how happy she is when he escapes from the crib to read and how curious he is during visits to the market. She thinks this comes from Reynolds and fears that, in the future, Arthur will want to go out into the world. Even so, she hopes that he will live a more peaceful life. At another moment, Arthur sees his father training magic and becomes excited at the idea of being able to learn from him. Initially, he finds his father's display too simple. But when Alice appears and encourages him to pay more attention, Reynolds releases a much more impressive power. Arthur concludes that he is an augmenter. Excited, he wants to try to do something as well, but is interrupted by Alice, who says that it is already time to sleep. As he is taken to the bedroom, he sees a book on the shelf and starts to cry, pointing at it. With a convincing little face, he manages to persuade his mother to let him read for a little longer. While reading, he begins to try to channel mana throughout his body and direct it to a single point, the beginning of the creation of a magical core. When his parents think he is already asleep, an explosion occurs inside the house. Reynolds instinctively protects Alice, but ends up burned on his back. Once they make sure they are fine, they remember Arthur and run to where he was. When they arrive, they are shocked. Arthur is floating, surrounded by an intense energy. The two are paralyzed, just watching as their son begins to descend slowly. But when he lands, part of the ceiling collapses. Before something worse happens, the parents act quickly and save him. It was close. After that, everyone cries. Arthur, moved by the situation, realizes that Alice and Reynolds would do anything to protect him, something he had never experienced in his previous life. The scene shifts to a moment from Arthur's past. In that previous life, he was remembered as the most powerful king of all. One of his servants was caught trying to take his life, and by the laws of that time, the punishment would be immediate execution, without the right to a defense. However, the royal council decided to take another path, to send the man back to his country of origin, along with his entire family. They knew very well that the fate awaiting them there would be even worse than death. Desperate, the assailant begged for compassion. He asked Gray to at least spare his wife and son, but Gray, without showing any sign of compassion or hesitation, killed both before the man's eyes. He did not do it out of revenge. In his mind, it was an act of mercy. It was clear proof of how ruthless he could be. It is hard to believe that Arthur, this boy with a calm and gentle appearance, had once been someone capable of making such cold and merciless decisions. Now, in the present, Arthur spends some time with his father, Reynolds, who decides to gift him a pair of combat gloves identical to his own. But Arthur refuses the gift. He still prefers to continue training with his wooden sword. In his opinion, with the body he currently has, the gloves would limit his movements too much and put him at a disadvantage. Reynolds does not insist on the matter of the gloves. He simply smiles and begins his own warm-up. But today's training would be different. During the spar, Arthur reveals that he has learned to reinforce his sword with mana. Surprising Reynolds, he disarms him for the first time. It was Arthur's first victory against his father, leaving Reynolds completely speechless, impressed by his son's sudden progress. Later, during dinner, Reynolds announces that it is time to find a real instructor for Arthur. He recognizes that if he continues to be solely responsible for his training, he will end up limiting the boy's growth. Alice, Arthur's mother, does not agree. She knows that this means he would have to leave the house in the hills and go to the city, even at such a young age, but Reynolds insists. He explains that Arthur is already capable of enhancing any object with magic and states that this decision is necessary for his future. Dinner turns into an argument. To resolve the situation, Arthur suggests that both of them accompany him to the city. That way, Reynolds can find the ideal tutor for his son, and Alice can stay by the boy's side. The proposal is accepted immediately. They begin packing their things to move. Shortly after, Reynolds' former companions, a group of adventurers known as the Twin Horns, appear to escort the family to the city. Arthur introduces himself to the group and speaks with their leader, Adam. He mentions that the two of them have met before, although he thinks Arthur would not remember. But Arthur remembers perfectly. It was when he blew up the house and the group showed up to help rebuild everything. On that occasion, he discovered that his parents had once been part of the Twin Horns before settling in the hills. After that conversation, Angela arrives and hugs Arthur tightly, almost taking his breath away. Durin, the group's warrior, saves him by pulling him away. At that moment, Arthur notices a girl watching him from atop the carriage. She is Jasmine, who simply stares at him without saying anything. Her gaze leaves him thoughtful. Soon after, Helen approaches, shakes his hand, and introduces herself, along with Jasmine. With everyone introduced, the journey to the city of Xyrus begins. During the trip, Arthur thinks about how that means of transportation is outdated compared to his old world, where flying vehicles were common. Even so, he is not bothered. After all, he has his mother by his side throughout the entire journey. They make stops every day. At one of them, they are attacked by wild wolves. Arthur realizes for the first time how dangerous that world can be. Jasmine enters the fight, using her daggers with impressive precision. Reynolds, Adam, and the others also join the battle and resolve everything quickly. Arthur, just watching, feels inspired by them and begins to want to be part of that kind of adventure. That night, the group celebrates with a banquet. Arthur notices that his mother is not eating. She says she is satisfied, but he feels that something is off. Then, she notices a wound on Reynolds' arm and stands up to heal him. The atmosphere changes. Everyone becomes alert, being careful so that no one sees them. It becomes clear to Arthur that his mother's healing ability is something rare and very valuable in that world. Now he understands why his parents lived in isolation to keep Alice's power away from curious eyes. After dinner, Adam invites Arthur to a duel. He wants to see with his own eyes what Reynolds had said about the boy's talent. The other members get excited and gather around the two to watch. Arthur, only 4 years old, wonders why no one seems concerned about fighting a child, but he accepts the challenge. It is the first time he would face someone other than his own father, and Adam uses a real spear, even if it is covered with bandages. As soon as the fight begins, Adam reinforces his weapon with mana. Arthur does the same, but goes even further. He channels mana into his feet to increase his speed. In an instant, he approaches Adam before he can even react. Then he feints Adam and reappears behind him, surprising everyone with his speed and precision. The fight continues, but the physical difference between them is clear. Adam, with a single blow, sends him flying. Arthur feels firsthand how his body is still too light for direct combat. Before hitting the ground, Angela softens his fall with wind magic. Durin scolds Adam for going too far. Adam apologizes, saying he was caught off guard by the boy's technique and could not contain his excitement. He wonders what kind of training Reynolds gave his son to make him so strong. Meanwhile, Jasmine watches Arthur intently. She wants to understand how he did that. She begs him to teach her. From her expression, Arthur realizes that she will not give up until she learns. The next morning, the group resumes the journey. At a stop, Adam begins teaching Arthur how to use a spear, while Reynolds puts him through intense training exercises. Later, Helen teaches him how to use a bow, and Arthur learns quickly. After that, he begins training Jasmine, who also proves to be quite talented. That night, while Arthur reads a book, he notices that Jasmine continues to watch him as if trying to understand what made him so special. The next day, it is Arthur's birthday. Jasmine gives him a dagger as a gift, and even starts explaining how to use it, surprising the other girls. Tired of the childish games, Adam says it is time to move on. But before that, Alice calls Arthur, and he notices that she is not feeling well. He asks what is going on, but she says everything is fine, even though he feels that is not really the case. During the journey, the group is attacked by bandits. Everyone jumps out of the carriage and takes position. Arrows come from all directions, but Angela protects the group with a magical barrier. Arthur realizes they are surrounded. The bandit leader orders that women and children not be harmed, as he wants to sell them. The battle begins. Alice, frightened, tries to calm Arthur. Before they are reached, Duran pushes the enemies back with an explosion, and Reynolds takes down 2 of them with his fists. One of the bandits tries to attack Reynolds from behind, but Helen stops him with a precise arrow shot. Adam moves among the enemies with his spear, and Jasmine takes down several with her daggers. Even so, there are many enemies. The group begins to grow tired. Eventually, Reynolds is thrown against the carriage and loses consciousness. The bandit leader approaches Alice and Arthur. When the 2 run from the carriage, Reynolds wakes up and tells them to get away. Even injured, he insists that Arthur flee with his mother. He reveals that Alice is pregnant, explaining why she seemed unwell. Arthur hesitates, but eventually accepts. He grabs his mother's arm and starts running. The leader orders them to be stopped, but the group members intervene, clearing a path for them to escape. As he runs, Arthur remembers his past life. He was once someone who took lives without hesitation, but now he was fighting not to lose someone important. While running, he senses a presence coming from the mountains. He sees a man about to cast magic at them. Without thinking twice, he pushes his mother to protect her and is struck, falling down the mountainside. During the fall, he decides he will not go alone. He uses the dagger Jasmine gave him, which has a rope attached, and throws it at the enemy. It catches on the man's leg, pulling him along. Meanwhile, Duran and Angela try to use magic to save him, but he is too far away. Arthur begins to reflect on everything as he falls, and his mother, from above, screams his name in despair. Tears run down her face. Arthur, on the other hand, feels that he has fulfilled his duty to protect his family, even at the cost of his own life. He is sad that he will not be able to meet the sibling who was to come, but feels that he did what was necessary. Incredibly, Arthur survives the fall, but when he opens his eyes, he is faced with a gigantic and terrifying monster. The image of the creature before Arthur completely paralyzes him. He is unable to utter a single word. The feeling is that he was drawn there on purpose, and with that, he tries to attack her, but her reaction is simple and unexpected. With a light touch, she pushes him away as if he were nothing. She assures him that she poses no danger and calmly stands up, walking over to an unusual plant that she cultivated on her own to harvest magical fruits. Her intention is to feed Arthur, assuming that he needs to recover, since he is still injured. Her attitude leaves Arthur bewildered. It is hard to believe that a creature with such a threatening appearance is treating him with so much care, almost as if she were a maternal figure. Even so, he cannot fully trust her. Something inside him doubts her intentions, but as he feels pain and cannot even move, he gives in to his emotions and begins to cry. The creature promises Arthur that she will answer anything he wants to know, so he asks his first question. He wants to know if his parents are well. She replies that, although she cannot leave the cave, she used her spatial awareness to confirm that his family defeated all the bandits and left that place a few days ago. Arthur feels great relief upon learning that his mother, his father, and his future sister are safe. He sincerely thanks her for saving his life. Not knowing what to call her, she finally introduces herself as Sylvia. But it becomes clear that Sylvia holds many secrets. In the following days, she continues to take care of Arthur, offering the same magical fruits, which help his body recover completely. Over time, Arthur is able to walk again and feels the desire to return home. However, according to Sylvia, The region is still very dangerous, full of fierce creatures and thieves, and he would not survive even a single day on his own. Even so, Sylvia does not want to see him trapped there. She decides to find a way to help him leave, using the little magic that still remains in her body to open a dimensional rift. Meanwhile, Arthur spends his time training his sword skills, but he cannot stop thinking about the mysteries surrounding Sylvia. Why is she being so protective of him? And what does that enormous hole in her chest mean? Since she never talks about herself, these questions remain unanswered. After training, Arthur meditates to strengthen his mana, which catches Sylvia's attention. Curious, she decides to show him something even more interesting: a way to absorb mana from the environment while casting spells at the same time. She explains that the way people perceive mana as something that must be gathered before being used is limited. She says that beings like her are able to use and collect mana simultaneously, which prevents exhaustion. Sylvia also mentions that magical creatures can do this instinctively, as if it were breathing. Then, she asks Arthur if he wants to learn this technique. He responds enthusiastically, saying yes, but before teaching him, she wants to know his reason. Arthur answers honestly. He wants this power to become stronger and, with it, destroy anyone who harms those he loves. The answer does not please Sylvia. She touches his forehead, saying that he has failed. She refuses to teach something so valuable to someone consumed by hatred. Arthur argues that it is normal to feel anger toward enemies, especially after everything he experienced in his previous existence as a king. Sylvia perceives this darkness within him and explains that causing pain to others cannot be the goal. After a pause, she apologizes for being harsh, but reminds him that the same hands capable of ending him were also the ones that touched him with tenderness. This is the lesson she wants to leave. It is better to act with kindness. Anger and violence only bring suffering. She saved his life with care and affection, and does not want to see that gesture tainted by negative feelings. When Arthur begins to understand what she is trying to convey, she questions him again. What will he do when he becomes powerful? Arthur, thinking of all the good moments he experienced with his parents and friends, answers that he will use his strength to protect them. This time, Sylvia smiles and approves, but in another place, nearby, on top of a cliff, a different figure appears, someone who looks very much like Sylvia. He is searching for her, as she has disappeared from the kingdom where she lived. Then, we are taken to a moment from Arthur's past life. He is in his royal chambers. After waking up, he goes to the office of one of the members of parliament. There, he admits that he only carries the title of king, since those who truly govern are the parliament. In a world on the brink of collapse, with scarce resources and a decline in the number of births, Arthur believes that his role is merely that of being a living weapon. The subordinate tries to reassure him with praise, but Arthur walks away. Shortly after, he is mysteriously assassinated. When he tries to use the new power he received from Sylvia, memories of his previous life return. He remembers how he struggled to unleash the power of Kai, and now, with this new power, he feels completely overwhelmed by it. Once again, the doubt arises, what will he do with this strength? Suddenly, Sylvia pushes him against a rock. He does not understand what is happening. She, who has protected him until now, is hiding him. She asks him to stay there, safe, without fear. Inside the rock, Arthur feels an immense energy. Another creature appears with an appearance identical to Sylvia's. He found her thanks to the scent of blood. He demands that she return with him. Sylvia refuses and is willing to fight until the end. When the battle begins, she takes on her true form. She is a powerful dragon. The creature warns her that this kind of power could end her life. But Sylvia is at peace with that fate. For her, every moment lived was worth it. Even if it means dying, she will not back down. The fight is intense. Arthur watches, powerless. The battle seems balanced until Sylvia uses her final move. She freezes everything around, traps the opponent, and opens the cave's entrance for Arthur to escape. When he gets out, he sees who she truly is, a majestic dragon, and she tells him that now it is time to go. She says that the power she gave him is so that he can find the way back. She reinforces her hope that he will not be guided by anger. Arthur states that he will use the power to protect those he loves. She smiles. She does not want him to follow a path of hatred. She wants him to share love with the world. Her words touch Arthur. Before leaving, she gives him a dragon egg and a feather, asking him to wrap the egg with it. As he touches it, an immense energy runs through his body. Glowing lines appear along his arm, tearing his shirt. Sylvia admits that she could have sent him away earlier. She knew how. But she enjoyed his company. Having someone to talk to after so long was special. Arthur feels the same. He learned a lot from her. The farewell is painful. Arthur, in tears, feels that he failed for not being able to protect her. He remembers everything she taught him. Despite everything, she smiles. For her, her life had meaning. With a sincere smile, he says that no matter what she is, dragon or monster, she is family. She smiles and jokes, saying that he already has a mother, and he responds with something that deeply moves her. "Then you are my grandmother." That word touches her in a special way. She cries. She asks him to say it again. He repeats it. Arthur holds the egg and the feather. The sky closes in. It is time to move on. He does not want to leave her. He asks her to go with him, but there is no answer. The opening disappears. Sylvia releases the seal, and the opponent regains his strength. She falls to the ground, motionless. He approaches, surprised that she is so weak, but it was all part of the plan. Sylvia opens her eyes and releases a burst of mana so intense that no one could survive. The entire cave trembles. The energy reaches even the surface. Outside, Arthur continues on his path, still crying. Her voice echoes in the skies, asking him to remember the conversations they had. She understands that he is sad, but asks that, even so, he tries to smile. Revenge must not guide his steps, and if it is difficult, that he moves forward slowly, one step at a time. Arthur doubts himself, but she reminds him of who he is. Gray, the most powerful king. He can do anything, and he must not use that power to carry pain. He must choose happiness. Arthur is left speechless. She always knew who he truly was. The moment is filled with emotion. Her voice fades away with the wind. Then Arthur places her egg in his backpack and prepares for his new journey. So, increasing the speed of his movements with the use of mana, Arthur advanced through the Elshire forest, careful not to damage Sylvia's egg that he carried. Jumping from branch to branch as if he were Tarzan himself, he suddenly picked up the sound of human voices. Without hesitation, he moved closer, hoping that maybe he could follow that group to the city where his family was waiting for him. However, as soon as he landed on a tree above them, he realized that the situation was very different from what he had imagined. Down below were 4 bandits, and they had kidnapped a young elf girl to sell her as a slave. Arthur immediately remembered a similar group he had faced days earlier, men who had tried to capture him along with his mother. Without a doubt, these must be part of the same organization. A desire for justice ignited in his chest. Meanwhile, the kidnappers pushed the elf girl into the cart and prepared to leave. The scene outraged Arthur. Even so, he forced himself to remember Sylvia's words and restrained his fury, choosing instead to follow the cart stealthily until dusk. When the group stopped to camp, Arthur realized he had 2 options. He could continue following them safely until they reached some human city, but that would mean abandoning the young elf to her fate. He knew he wouldn't be able to ignore it. He waited until midnight to act. The bandits used horned wolves to pull the cart, and Arthur came up with a plan to destabilize the camp. He began throwing stones at the animals, making them howl loudly and threateningly. Frightened by the idea that the howls might attract dangerous predators, one of the bandits approached the wolves and started kicking them in an attempt to silence them. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Arthur sneaked up to him. Reinforcing his hand with mana, he turned it into a living blade and quickly incapacitated the man. Then, he grabbed the bandit's knife and eliminated the second kidnapper without hesitation. The third one noticed something was wrong and tried to react, but Arthur was faster and struck his leg. In desperation, the man warned the group's leader about the attack. The leader, however, was not concerned. To him, Arthur seemed like just another valuable piece of merchandise. Determined to capture him alive, he dropped his sword, reinforced his hands with mana, and advanced into unarmed combat. Arthur dodged the first blow and tried to use his line technique to strike the leader, just as he had done in a previous fight. But the leader, more experienced in battle, saw through the trick and delivered a strong kick to Arthur, sending him flying. Without giving him time to react, he grabbed the boy's leg, convinced it was the end, but for Arthur, it had barely begun. With a fire spell, he burned his opponent's leg, making the bandit roar in anger. Now, the leader shouted that he would sell only the annoying child's corpse to sick collectors. While he gave in to his own hatred, Arthur took the opportunity to throw his knife using the line technique, embedding it right into the enemy's forehead and ending the fight in an instant. The third bandit, still alive, fell to his knees, begging for mercy and promising to change his life. But Arthur knew those empty words well. He couldn't afford to leave witnesses, so he finished the job. Climbing onto the cart, Arthur removed the blindfold from the elf girl and tried to calm her down, assuring her that she was now safe. Even so, she became frightened upon seeing his injured state. Understanding that children do not deal well with violence, Arthur quickly covered the bandits' bodies and told a small lie. He said that the bad men had died in an accident. Innocent, the girl believed it without question. After taking some useful supplies, Arthur was preparing to leave, but he was stopped when the little elf held his hand, pleading not to be left alone in that forest full of dangers. She said her parents had already told stories about tree ghosts that ate children even if they were just legends to scare kids. With no other choice, Arthur decided to take her back home. The girl pointed south, saying her home was in that direction, the opposite side of where Arthur should go to reunite with his parents, asking how she ended up in that situation. The answer was simple. While playing, she followed some insects and ended up getting lost. He wasn't surprised. He remembered his past life, recalling when he was also imprisoned at the same age. He would not allow her to go through something similar. As for the horned wolves, the girl asked to release them, explaining that they would die if they remained trapped. Arthur, even though reluctant and afraid they would be attacked as soon as they were freed, simply watched as she untied their bindings and allowed the animals to return to the forest. Happy for having saved such a kind soul, Arthur renewed his determination to protect her. The next day, they began their walk. At some point, Arthur asked her name, and the little elf replied with a smile, Tesha. When she asked his name, he answered politely. As they walked, Arthur noticed that she was probably starving, so he made her sit down and handed her a bowl of food. Even without being hungry, he explained that it was important to eat to maintain strength. Memories of Sylvia came to mind. She used to say exactly that. Tesha wrinkled her nose, saying that the smell of the food was strange. Arthur laughed internally. After everything they had been through, she was still complaining. Typical child behavior. He tried to improve the taste by adding some leaves, but even so, she made a face. For Arthur, food was synonymous with survival, not flavor. Watching the girl complain made him better understand what it means to be a child. She commented that she wanted something sweet, but under those circumstances, it was impossible. And so, they continued their journey. During the trip, Tesha said that her city was full of mana, and that she could hardly wait to awaken her own energy and study with her master. Arthur was surprised that she would have a mentor instead of attending a school system. Night fell, and he set up a tent so Tesha could rest. He heard the howls of the wolves he had freed and, worried, regretted not having killed them. Tesha called him into the tent, saying it was dangerous to stay outside. But Arthur preferred to keep watch. The girl insisted, commenting that her grandfather had taught her not to sleep in the same environment as a boy, but that she would make an exception in that case and promised not to tell anyone. When Arthur still hesitated, she argued that if he stayed outside, others would see that they were children, and there would be a higher chance of them being attacked. Tired, Arthur gave in and went inside. Inside the tent, Tesha talked about humans, saying they were perverted and had many wives. Arthur tried to explain that not all of them were like that, but she had already fallen asleep. Soon after, he also drifted off. The next day, they resumed their journey. Suddenly, Arthur felt an unbearable pain coming from his manacor, but he said everything was fine so Tesha wouldn't worry. Even when she asked, he replied that he was okay. One of the horned wolves that Tesha had saved brought a small prey as a gesture of gratitude for what they had done, and that night they fed on delicious meat. On the next day, Tesha asked to call him Artie. In response, he joked by calling her Your Highness, which made her irritated. She just wanted to feel closer, and Arthur, not used to friendships, was still learning how to deal with that. Further ahead, Tesha found a passage and called Arthur. Without understanding very well, he held her hand, crossing to the other side. When he fell to the ground, exhausted, he was surprised. Soldiers appeared around him, pointing weapons in his direction. They said they had tracked the two of them there because they used the teleportation portal. Before Arthur could react, he was immobilized. Desperate, he shouted for Tesha, only to see her standing there without reaction and without expression. The guards look at Arthur with suspicion and demand to know who gave permission for a human to enter that sacred place. Not knowing what to say, Arthur turns his head toward Tesha, hoping she will say something to get him out of that situation. But when she says nothing, he feels a sting of disappointment. He thought he could trust her, even considered Tesha a friend. But now it seemed he had been mistaken. What he didn't know is that she was just frozen, not knowing how to react. She was only a child, frightened by the pressure. When the guards say they are going to finish Arthur off, Tesha finally gathers the courage to intervene, saying that he saved her life. Even so, the guards don't believe it. They claim that Arthur must have done something to manipulate her mind and convince her of that. But before the situation gets worse, someone appears through the same magical portal. A man with an imposing yet calm presence emerges and orders them to leave Arthur alone. It is Virian Iralith, the former king of Elenwar. He personally thanks Arthur for saving his granddaughter and reveals that Tesha is the princess of the kingdom. Arthur is completely surprised. He would never have imagined that Tesha was royalty. She never acted in a way that revealed that during the time they spent together. Soon after, Tesha's parents, the King Alduin and the Queen Muriel, arrive, relieved to see their daughter again after so many days of worry. While Muriel checks if her daughter is all right, Alduin turns to Arthur, visibly displeased, and asks what a human is doing there, and without thinking twice, orders the soldiers to get rid of Arthur. Virian once again steps in and says that it was he who told the guards to stand down. Calmly, he explains that Arthur saved their granddaughter, even being a human, and that should be taken into consideration. Tesha supports what Virian said, begging her father not to hurt Arthur. She then suggests inviting him to the castle. The idea of a human crossing the castle gates clearly makes Alduin hesitate. But Tesha leaves her father with no choice until he agrees. Then she runs to Arthur and says that if he goes with her, she will share her favorite sweets with him. Meanwhile, Virian is intrigued by the power he senses in Arthur, and says he needs to speak with him in private later. Arthur then follows Tesha, exploring the kingdom of Elenwar. The city is full of beauty, with structures spread among and beneath the trees. The people live peacefully, far from conflict. But even so, everyone looks at Arthur with curiosity, wondering what a human is doing there. Despite everything, Arthur still can't forget the moment when Tesha hesitated to help him. Why did she do that? And that serious expression on her face. These thoughts keep echoing in his mind, bringing a discomfort that is hard to ignore. He continues observing everything around him cautiously, without letting his guard down. When they arrive at the castle, they are received by several elven maids. They exist to take care of everything Tesha might need. But today, Tesha wants to repay Arthur. She orders them to treat Arthur with the best hospitality possible and tells them all that he saved her life. When she notices that some of the servants are not fully convinced, Tesha declares that Arthur is one of the rare humans with a good heart. Then she turns to Arthur and asks what he wants to do: eat, play, have lunch, or maybe freshen up. But Arthur has another priority. Before anything else, he wants to speak with Tesha's parents about what happened in the forest. There is still a lot left unexplained. Everyone gathers in a room meant for serious conversations, but Tesha seems to be in a different mood and shows up carrying tea and snacks, as if it were a meeting to relax. Alduin introduces himself to Arthur in a more formal manner, along with Muriel and Virian. Arthur also introduces himself, saying that he is just an ordinary child from a distant village in the kingdom of Sapin. He kneels respectfully, saying he never imagined that a commoner like him would have the chance to be in the presence of royalty, much less sitting in the same room. Alduin is surprised by the boy's manners and allows him to continue. Arthur then tells everything that happened since he got separated from his family. He doesn't lie, but he also doesn't reveal everything, like his encounter with the mysterious Sylvia. When he reaches the part where he finds Tesha being taken by slave traffickers, the atmosphere in the room changes. Alduin, as always, takes the opportunity to blame humanity, saying they are all barbarians. But Virion asks the question that really matters: how did a 5-year-old boy manage to defeat 3 adult slave traffickers? It certainly wasn't through talk. Arthur finally reveals that he is a mage and used his powers to save her. Alduin doesn't believe it, and the same guard from before interrupts again, saying that all of this is mental manipulation. Virion, who has been defending Arthur from the beginning, gets irritated by the disrespect and silences him. Tesha also speaks, saying that she heard the traffickers saying they were going to sell her, recalling the horrible experience. Muriel, emotional, hugs her daughter tightly. Alduin finally realizes what his daughter went through. Then he turns to Arthur and says that he believes him, thanking him for everything he did. Arthur takes the opportunity to explain the reason he asked for that meeting. He is separated from his family, and all he wants is to reunite with them in Sapin. Alduin is shocked. A human asking for help from the elves, he replies that he would never help humans, and that Arthur needs to find his way back on his own. But Arthur is clever. He says that if they are not capable of repaying the favor he did, then they have no right to call humans barbarians, as they would be behaving the same way. Virion calmly says that Arthur got him there. He agrees with Arthur and says that his son fell into his own trap. Tisha also waits for her father's answer. With no way out, Alduin accepts. He informs Arthur that there is a portal that leads to Sapin, but it can only be used once every 7 years. Since it was used recently, it can only be opened again in 5 years. Arthur cannot wait that long. He needs to see his parents soon. Alduin realizes this and says that he will send soldiers to escort him home. The journey will begin the next day. This brings relief to Arthur, but his mana core starts to hurt again. He leaves the room and tries to relax with a bath. The pain does not go away. He presses his chest, trying to understand what is happening and what he could do. He thinks about Sylvia, wondering what she would do in this situation. After that, he decides to take a walk through the palace. The fresh air helps a little with the pain. He thinks about his parents and feels an overwhelming sense of longing. He wonders if they are still alive, but soon concludes that they are too strong not to be. When he looks up and sees Tesha with her parents, he wonders if his family will welcome him with the same affection, or if they will be angry at him for being gone for so long. These thoughts weigh heavily on a boy like him. Tesha runs toward him. Arthur teases her, calling her a spoiled princess and saying that she should go enjoy her time with her parents. But he opens up to her, saying that he is afraid of how he will be received by his parents. Tesha holds his face, finding it unbelievable how someone can be so silly. What kind of parents wouldn't be happy to see their child again? She is sure that his parents are very worried. Suddenly, glowing flowers begin to fall from the sky. She smiles and explains what they are. Arthur watches and remembers the moment he thought she was going to betray him, realizing that he only thought that because he is still dominated by the darkness inside him due to his past. Then he apologizes to Tesha and says that he also liked the flowers. Arthur notices something dangerous coming toward Tesha and immediately counterattacks. To his surprise, the one who launched the attack was Virion. Arthur asks why Virion is attacking his own granddaughter, but he only smiles, saying that no one would get hurt by flowers. Arthur realizes that he did that to test him, which worked. Now Virion believes that he really took down the bandits. Tesha runs toward him, begging him not to hurt Arthur, but Virion replies that he is not intimidating anyone. He just found someone interesting for the first time and does not intend to let him slip away. Using magic, he makes Tesha sit down and throws a wooden sword to Arthur. The boy quickly understands Virion's intention, and the fight begins. Arthur gives it his all, uses all his mana, but cannot hit Virion, who is faster. When he tries a stronger attack, the sword breaks and a piece almost hits Tesha, but Arthur protects her. He decides to use magic. The force is immense, few would endure it. but Virion repels the spell as if it were nothing. After several attempts, Arthur finally hits Virion on the head. He is surprised, but instead of backing off, he becomes more excited to continue fighting. But Tesha stands up and pinches her grandfather, asking him to leave Art alone. Virion says that Arthur is not the child everyone thinks he is, and if someone was intimidated, it was him. Arthur does not want that reputation. He says that Virion is exaggerating. But then, Virion makes a proposal. He wants Arthur to become his disciple. The idea does not seem bad, and Arthur begins to consider it. But when he remembers his parents and their worry, he thinks it is better to refuse. He explains everything to Virion, who then says that there is a way to inform his parents that he is fine without needing to go personally. Arthur tries to understand better, but the pain returns to his monocore. This confirms Virion's suspicion. Arthur has inherited a beast will. The only way to survive this is by becoming his disciple. Subsequently, Arthur finds himself completely paralyzed. His body doesn't respond, and his heart tightens as if something were crushing him from the inside. As he tries to endure the pain, a dark and heavy energy begins to emerge from his chest. It transforms before him, taking the shape of a strange and threatening creature. Frightened, he closes his eyes, trying to understand whether that was a representation of his anguish, or perhaps the weight of everything he carries. The creature approaches, about to attack him, but then a soft voice echoes, calling his name. It's Tesha. Her voice brings an unexpected peace that calms his heart. When he opens his eyes, Arthur finds Tesha sitting on top of him. Tesha smiles and wishes him a good morning, but he pretends to ignore her, turning his face away and murmuring something as if she were a monster from his dreams. Tesha gets annoyed with the joke and tells him that her grandfather is waiting outside. Since Arthur doesn't react, she decides to pull him out of bed by force, telling him to fix that messy hair. Arthur snaps back, saying that her hair, just a few minutes ago, looked like Medusa's. While getting dressed, Tesha asks if he really intends to stay there. Arthur replies that he's still thinking about it and calls her princess. She rolls her eyes. She's tired of him always speaking to her like that, considering they are already friends. To make that clear, she pinches his back and warns that she'll actually get in a bad mood if he uses that title again. Arthur comments that if that's the case, then she's already angry, and wonders if it's even possible for her to get more irritated than she already is. Later, already ready, the two leave the castle and spot a carriage. Alduin, Tesha's father, argues with Virion, asking him not to allow Arthur to remain there. Both Alduin and his wife still hold that old prejudice against humans, but Virion doesn't listen. He enters the carriage and makes it clear that his decision is made. Arthur will stay. Tesha hears everything and once again steps forward to defend Arthur. She insists that they should let him stay. After all, he saved her life. Alduin even admits he is grateful, but says that it doesn't change the fact that he doesn't want a human defiling that sacred land. Virion grows tired of his son's words. He interrupts the discussion, reminding everyone who is in charge there, and orders Arthur and Tesha to get into the carriage immediately. The vehicle heads toward the house of an old friend of Virion. During the journey, Tesha falls asleep leaning on Arthur's shoulder. Virion watches and comments that she woke up early because this day is important, as it will be decided whether he will stay there or leave. While gently stroking his granddaughter, Virion reveals that she has always lived in isolation. She never had true friends, since everyone around her only wanted to take advantage of her. Because of that, she learned to keep her distance from people. Hearing this, Arthur understands why Tesha gets so irritated when he calls her princess. Virion then mentions that he only sees his granddaughter truly smile when she is with Arthur. He sincerely thanks him for their friendship, which makes Arthur realize how much Tesha values him. This gesture makes Arthur trust the old man even more. The carriage arrives at its destination. Arthur wonders who could be important enough to receive a personal visit from a former king. Virion, who until then had been behaving like a noble, bangs loudly on the door and shouts, calling the lady of the house an old witch, but no one responds. He leans his ear against the door and is surprised when it suddenly swings open. The woman replying that she hears perfectly well and doesn't need shouting in her ears. Virion stands up and introduces her. Rinnia Darkhassen. He explains that she is a skilled mage, capable of granting Arthur's wish. Arthur gets excited and shows respect toward her, which pleases her. She allows everyone to enter. Inside the house, Arthur looks around and sees only a basin filled with water. Not understanding, he asks how she will help him communicate with his parents. Rinia explains that she is a seer, someone capable of seeing parts of the past and the future. She tries to use her powers on Arthur, but is surprised when she can barely see anything, stating that he is someone special. Arthur replies that he doesn't want to know the future. He just wants, somehow, to tell his parents that he is fine. Rinia instructs Arthur to look at the reflection in the water in the bucket and think about his parents as vividly as possible. She uses her magic, and through the water, Arthur sees them. Alice and Reynolds are having lunch together, still mourning the loss of their son. It is Arthur's birthday. They recall the tragedy that led to their separation. Reynolds now works in city security, and the two live in a mansion, where Alice takes care of her pregnancy. As they cry, remembering their son, Arthur finally speaks to them. He says that he is alive, that he is in the land of the elves and using a special kind of magic to communicate. He explains that he still cannot return because his body needs care, but begs them not to blame themselves for what happened, and finishes by saying that he loves them very much. Alice, overwhelmed with emotion, embraces Reynolds, radiant upon learning that her son is still alive. Arthur, with his eyes full of tears, decides right then that he will never again allow his parents to suffer like that. He commits himself to becoming stronger and asks Virian to accept him as a disciple. Although Virian accepted, things do not become easy. Alduin and his wife remain suspicious, and many elves do not want a human there. Virian and Tesha meet with Alduin to try to resolve this. Tesha argues that Arthur saved her life twice, and that if they still reject him, they are basically saying that elves repay good deeds with hostility. Alduin says he understands, but fears the reaction of the people. Virian, firm, declares that he would never accept a disciple if he did not believe in him. Faced with this, and out of respect for his father and daughter, Alduin gives in. Virian reassures him, stating that he will take responsibility if anything goes wrong. Alduin and his wife go to Arthur to welcome him. Alduin admits that he was harsh with him, but that it is not Arthur's fault, but rather the image that humans have. Arthur notices the change. The same man who once did not want him there now extends his hand to greet him. Alduin loves his family and will do what is necessary to see them happy. But Tesha wants more. She challenges her father to let her show the city to Arthur. Since the news of his stay has already spread, Alduin accepts. Happy, Tesha takes him through the streets and introduces him to the shops, the residents, and even convinces him to go to a snack and fruit shop. While they walk, a young elf bumps into Arthur. Even after being pushed, Arthur apologizes and tries to leave, but the elf looks at him with contempt. He says that Arthur has contaminated him for being human, and that, even if Virian wants him there, he will never be accepted. Arthur, who has learned to be more mischievous with Tesha, decides to provoke him. The boy introduces himself as Faerith Ifsar II, and says that being with Arthur will only tarnish Tesha's image, offering to take her home. Tesha scolds him, but Arthur goes further. He makes an exaggerated bow and purposely gets the elf's family name wrong, calling him the very same grass-type Pokemon of Ash Ketchum from Pallet Town, Ivysaur. Tesha realizes it and bursts out laughing. Faerith understands the provocation and, to maintain his noble composure, challenges Arthur to a duel. Challenging someone in public in that city is a serious matter. All the adults stop to watch. If Arthur refused, he would tarnish the honor of Virian and Tesha's family. So he accepts. Faerith asks Tesha to be the judge. She gives the signal to begin, and Faerith rushes forward. But Arthur, calm, lands a single blow, and the boy falls unconscious. Tesha is not surprised. She had already warned that Arthur was strong. Since Faerith did not listen, now he has to face the consequences. She grabs Arthur by the hand, and the two run off, smiling. Over time, Arthur gets used to Tesha's company. They walk together, eat together, even study side by side. Whenever someone tries to intimidate him, Tesha is nearby to defend him. On one of those afternoons, she joins him near a railing and asks about the training that begins the next day. He seems thoughtful. She notices and asks if everything is all right. Arthur remembers what Virian told him earlier. He is alone in that land. Even so, he decided to stay and learn. Virian warned him that it would be the most difficult challenge of his life, but that if he endured, he would have a bright future. Arthur reaffirmed his will and heard from the old man that, for now, he should ignore the pain in his mana core. Back in the present, Arthur looks at Tesha with determination. He says that he is excited for the training, that he knows he has been through a lot, but nothing compares to what is to come. He is determined to move forward and become stronger. Tesha extends her hand and says that she will also give her best. Arthur asks for what, and she replies that she wants to make sure he does not leave her behind. The next day, the training begins. Arthur positions himself in front of Virian. Upon hearing the first instructions, he thinks to himself, life here moves at a different pace. In just a few days there, he has already learned a lot. He is growing, and even without knowing exactly what will come, he feels that the future will be exciting. Time passes and Tesha learns to control mana. One morning, she goes to wake Arthur, but he does not react. So she decides to use mana to wake him up for good. He gets up startled, shouting, and asks why she could not simply call him gently. Even so, Tesha smiles, knowing she first tried to wake him gently. The two leave the house together and, along the way, notice Virian leaving the place on his way to a meeting. Arthur becomes curious about the reason for that meeting, but Tesha quickly changes the subject. With an excited look, she reveals that she prepared a hamburger especially for him, and before he can say anything, she warns him that he should be grateful for a beautiful woman preparing that for him. Arthur starts eating, and between bites, he jokes by asking, "What beautiful woman?" just to tease her. Tesha, of course, gets angry at the response. After that, the two head to the training field, where Virian watches them while they practice hand-to-hand combat. Over time, he hands wooden swords to both of them, making the training more intense. Arthur doesn't miss the chance to tease again, calling her the beautiful Princess Tesha. But this time she doesn't get irritated. She simply replies that she will defeat him to teach him a lesson. After the sword training, Virian decides it's time to go further and introduces a new topic, magic. He explains that, upon awakening mana, a person can connect with one of the four main elements: fire, water, wind, or earth. This affinity usually varies according to race. For example, elves generally have a natural connection with wind, earth, and water. Dwarves, on the other hand, have more skill with earth and fire, and humans, well, they can have an affinity with any of the four elements, but usually master only one. The choice of element is completely random. However, Virian talks about extremely rare cases of people who can control more than one element, which seems to be exactly Arthur's case. Tesha raises her hand and asks why Arthur doesn't train his body while using magic, like she did. Virian replies that he is still too weak. His mana core contains a bestial will that is affecting the balance between his physical body and magical energy, and it is because of this imbalance that Arthur feels so much pain. Arthur begins to suspect that this bestial will has some connection with Sylvia, but prefers not to jump to conclusions. Virian explains that, to deal with this bestial will, it is first necessary to fully understand what is happening with his body. Tesha makes a joke, asking if he feels pain every time she hits him during training. Arthur admits that she really doesn't hold back. Then he comments that anyone would feel pain when being hit by her. Elves who awaken mana at 10 years old are considered prodigies, and Tesha awakened at just 9 years old. That is why Tesha became stronger, and now, training alongside Arthur is a way to better develop this new power. Virian decides that it is time for Arthur to try to awaken the bestial will that exists within him. To motivate him, he says that if everything goes well, he will stop feeling pain and become a true beast tamer. Arthur, curious, sits down as the ritual begins. Virian explains that he will ignite a flame within Arthur's magical core, and all he will feel is warmth in his body. Carefully, Virian transfers his own mana to Arthur, but something unexpected happens. Arthur screams in pain as a wave of mana explodes, throwing Virian and Tesha away. After that, Arthur falls unconscious on the ground. As soon as he realizes what happened, Virion takes him back. When Arthur awakens, Virion asks if he can identify the bestial will within himself. Arthur replies that it was a dragon. Virion already suspected this, since dragons are legendary creatures. He asks Arthur to never reveal this information, to avoid problems with dangerous people. With the bestial will awakened, Virion informs that Arthur will be able to return home in 4 months, which surprises him, since he thought he would stay there for 2 more years. The reason for the change is an exchange event between the 3 kingdoms, so the teleportation portal to the human city will be opened. Upon realizing that, on the day he saw Virion leaving for a meeting, it was actually to deal with this exchange matter, Arthur becomes emotional that he will finally be able to see his parents. He asks how Tesha will react to the news, but Virion assures him that she already knows her parents told her. That night, the egg he received from Sylvia began to crack, and Arthur, startled, doesn't know what to expect. When the shell breaks, an adorable hatchling appears. Arthur is instantly charmed, but soon gets bitten on the arm. He thinks it was aggression, but discovers that the hatchling only did that to cast a magical seal. Now, Arthur can hear her voice even if everything she says sounds like a bunch of meaningless noises. Even so, he is thrilled to be able to hear her. He decides to call her Sylvie, in honor of her mother. He looks at the seal on his arm, still not understanding what it means, but can't believe he became a father at just 8 years old, and soon after, he ends up falling asleep. The next day, Tesha enters the room as usual to wake him up. Since he sleeps heavily, she pulls off the blanket. When she sees Sylvie, she screams. Arthur wakes up startled, while Tesha is simply excited. She picks up Sylvie in her arms as if she were a baby. The two head to the training field, and Tesha does everything she can to make Sylvie like her. But Sylvie seems interested only in Arthur. When they arrive, Virion almost has a heart attack upon seeing that baby dragon, and he says that she probably was born now because he completely assimilated the bestial will. Looking at Sylvie, Arthur becomes worried. Even without him saying anything, Virion reassures him. No one would believe that a real dragon exists, so it is enough to say that she is a rare magical beast. Virion declares the start of training and says that now that Arthur is a beast tamer, it is time to train that as well, and the best way to do this is a battle. Virion assimilates his bestial will a shadow panther. The creature's presence is terrifying. The sound, the energy, and the darkness it emanates leave Arthur and Tesha frightened. To make matters worse, Virion demands that Arthur fight him, but he can barely see him. In that form, Virion disappears and reappears in fractions of seconds. Arthur gives up the fight, accepting defeat. Virion returns to his elf form and explains that the Shadow Panther grants instinctive control over the wind, and also neutralizes sound, which is an advanced spell. But on the other hand, it is very exhausting to maintain that form. After that, Virion picks up a wooden sword and continues the training normally. Time passes days, weeks, maybe months. Arthur improves a lot, to the point of fighting Virion in his bestial form. With the portal's opening approaching, Tesha begins to feel the weight of the farewell. During a festival in the city, she cannot even enjoy herself. Knowing that her friend is leaving, Arthur tries to cheer her up, asking her to at least smile. While walking through the city, a boy bumps into Arthur and looks at him strangely for being human. It is Faerith, the same elf who had already challenged Arthur once and lost with a single blow. He approaches and asks if Arthur remembers him. Arthur, being honest, says that he does not. Faerith insists, saying that he wants a rematch because now he is confident that he can win. But the result of the fight is the same as the first. Arthur knocks him down with a single blow. Tesha explains who he is, and Arthur finally remembers, extending his hand to greet him. Surprisingly, Faerith accepts. His friends say that Faerith just wanted to be friends with Arthur. They talk, and Arthur discovers that Faerith will also participate in the exchange. Faerith reveals that all the children of nobles will go. Arthur did not know this, since Tesha had not said whether she would go. When he looks at her, Faerith comments that they will not let the delicate princess get lost again. The word delicate definitely does not match Tesha, and to prove it, she hits Faerith hard. sending him flying far away, in true Team Rocket blasting off at the speed of light style. He faints on the spot. It was the first time Arthur saw a princess knock someone down like that. Without thinking twice, he pulls her away. Once they are farther away, he comments that a princess should not hit her subjects. But Tesha does not care. She is confused, full of thoughts, especially because Arthur is leaving, and Ferith ended up saying exactly what he should not have. She complains that Arthur is treating her like her father, and on top of that, he is leaving. She calls him old and runs away, locking herself in her room to cry. Arthur, realizing how shaken she is, enters through the window carrying the glowing flowers she loves. She sees him and goes to him. Arthur places a flower behind her ear and invites her for a walk. They walk through the forest, even with all the warnings not to go there. Arthur lights a campfire, and the two sit down to talk. Tesha starts to get sleepy, but wants to enjoy every minute. They talk about the human world until she falls asleep. The next morning, Arthur prepares to leave. Virion hands him a compass with the symbol of Iralith. That way, if he wants to return one day, he will know the path. He also casually comments for him to be more careful when going out with Tesha at night. Arthur just apologizes. He asks about Tesha before leaving, but imagines that she is too upset to say goodbye. When he is already in front of the portal with the other young people, Tesha appears running. She trips along the way, and Arthur runs to help her. She hugs him tightly, asking him not to forget to eat. He returns the hug, saying that he will miss her. With tears in her eyes, Tesha says that she will miss him too. The portal finally opens. The farewell is heartbreaking. After a long journey, Arthur finally returns to the human kingdom, and he is emotional that he will be able to see his parents again. He walks to the house, takes a deep breath, and knocks on the door. A little girl appears. Upon seeing her, Arthur immediately recognizes her. It is his sister. His parents soon appear at the door, calling the girl Elena. When they see Arthur there, they are left speechless. When Arthur appears in front of them, Alice and Reynolds simply can't believe what they're seeing. Without thinking twice, they run to him and hug him with all their strength. Filled with joy at having their son back, Alice starts to cry, unable to hold back her emotions, and little Elena soon asks her not to cry like that. Looking at her, Arthur quickly realizes that little girl is his younger sister, and just by looking into those eyes, he already feels that he would do anything to protect her. Arthur then kneels in front of her, introduces himself, and sees how surprised she is to meet the brother she has heard so much about. As soon as they enter the house, Alice wastes no time and starts bombarding her son with questions, wanting to know everything about the time he was away. Arthur assures her that he is fine, while Reynolds, laughing, asks her to take it easy and stop smothering the boy. Meanwhile, Elena watches everything, a bit sulky, feeling a little jealous seeing her parents give him so much attention. Alice then calls her over and explains that Arthur is the older brother from the stories she always hears before going to sleep. Arthur smiles and says he was really very eager to finally meet his little sister. At that moment, Sylvie, without wasting any time, jumps straight into Elena's lap, breaking that emotional atmosphere a bit. When everyone finally calms down, Arthur begins telling his family everything he has been through since they were separated. But about Sylvia, he chooses not to say anything for now, revealing that now, while he is still weak, could put everyone at risk. So, he simply says that he survived the fall thanks to luck and the unconscious use of magic. He goes on to explain how he ended up saving Tesha and how he spent the following years in the Elven Kingdom, training and dealing with the illness. He also talks about Sylvie, saying that she is just a magical beast he adopted after finding her mother too weak to survive. His parents feel relieved, trusting every word. Suddenly, Reynolds, curious, asks what stage Arthur's mana core is at. Right away, Alice scolds him, complaining that this is not the kind of question to ask now, with their son having just returned. Arthur laughs, changes the subject, and asks what his father's current job is. Reynolds replies, full of pride, that he now works as a security instructor at one of the largest auction houses in the city. Soon after, Reynolds mentions that 2 years ago, his mana core advanced to dark orange, which is considered an intermediate level. Arthur is quite impressed, realizing how much his father worked to reach that point. But deep down, he also knows that he himself is already at the light red stage, which, in practice, is just one step below what Reynolds has achieved. When Reynolds realizes this, he becomes completely flustered. Without thinking, he blurts out a damn, and little Elena starts repeating the word non-stop. Immediately, Alice gives that classic lecture, reminding him that she had already told him to stop saying things like that in front of their daughter. Even so, Reynolds can't hold back and, with a smile on his face, challenges Arthur to a duel, to test how strong he has become. Suddenly, the door opens and some people enter the house. Reynolds quickly introduces them. That is Vincent Helstia, the manager of the auction house where he works and also the owner of that house. The woman beside him is Tabitha, his wife. Arthur greets them with great respect, thanking them for everything they have done for his family. Vincent is so surprised by the boy's manners that he even makes a joke, asking if he is really Reynolds' son. Soon after, Tabitha introduces her daughter, Lilia, mentioning that they are the same age and could become good friends. Lilia, however, seems much more interested in Sylvie and quickly asks to pet her. Reynolds then tells Vincent that he and Arthur are going to fight in the garden and invites him to watch. Vincent is a bit surprised, but accepts and goes along with everyone. When he gets there and hears that Arthur's Monocore is at the light red stage, he is left speechless. Alice then explains that Arthur has always had an absurd ease for learning, and that there would be no reason to lie about it. Even so, Vincent finds it hard to believe. After all, even the greatest prodigies of the famous Xyrus Academy, at 11 or 12 years old, can barely reach deep red, and Arthur, at only 8 years old, is already at light red. Meanwhile, Arthur and Reynolds finish warming up. In an instant, the two dash toward each other. Arthur blocks his father's blows and tries to counterattack. Reynolds, however, defends easily and warns that it will take more than that if he wants to defeat him. But Arthur surprises him, using a kick that forces Reynolds to step back. Impressed, Reynolds warns that now he will stop holding back. He concentrates mana in his fist, which begins to catch fire. Arthur is surprised because he knows that in this world, every mage is born with an affinity for a specific element. For conjurers, this is much easier to identify and use. But for augmenters like Reynolds, mastering an element requires a lot of training and perception. Out of nowhere, Reynolds envelops his entire body in fire mana and charges straight at Arthur. He tries to defend himself, but is pushed back. At that moment, Arthur remembers his past life, when he used something called Kai, which worked similarly to the mana here. But unlike this world, those who mastered Kai could choose any element. Since being reborn here, bringing his past memories with him, Arthur has been able to control the 4 basic elements. Thanks to the training from both lives, he gathers mana in his fists, which begin to shine with an intense light, leaving everyone shocked. He advances toward Reynolds, and when their fists collide, the impact is so strong that it pushes both of them back. Reynolds then attacks more aggressively, landing a direct hit on his son. But Arthur doesn't give up and charges again. He remembers his training with Virion, how quickly he learned to master fire, and that because of that, the old elf decided to push him beyond his limits. With that memory fresh in his mind, Arthur makes his mana explode, now transforming it into electricity. Lightning starts bursting from his body, burning the grass around him. Reynolds is completely stunned, because he realizes that Arthur has mastered an even more advanced version of fire magic. Arthur then says that this is not all. Suddenly, he manipulates the water from the fountain, launching an attack directly at Reynolds' back. Everyone watching is frozen upon seeing Arthur using 2 elements at the same time. Reynolds can barely dodge, and as soon as the attack ends, Arthur disperses everything and his father runs to hug him. Proud, he asks where and when his son learned all that. Arthur replies that he learned it not long ago, but admits that he still cannot fully control it. While Alice handles all of this as if it were completely normal, Vincent and Tabitha are left speechless, already considering Arthur a true genius. Soon after, they return inside and sit at the table. Vincent then comments to Reynolds that Arthur has a bright future ahead. Reynolds agrees, saying he already knew that since the day Arthur awakened his Monocore at 3 years old. and destroyed the entire house in the process. Vincent widens his eyes upon hearing this, and, while Reynolds laughs proudly, he loses his balance and falls off the chair curious. After recovering, Vincent makes a proposal. They should consider enrolling Arthur in Zyra's academy. Reynolds is surprised and wants to make sure he is serious, since Zyra's is simply the best magic academy on the continent. Tabitha immediately supports the idea and even assures that they can cover the expenses, because, seeing Arthur's talent, there is no doubt that it is worth investing in him. Alice, however, becomes nervous and says they don't even know if the academy would accept their son. But Vincent responds confidently that he knows the director very well and can handle that. At that moment, Arthur decides to speak up. After all, they are talking about his life, and he also wants a say in the decision. He explains that he has just reunited with his family and doesn't want to be separated from them so soon. Vincent understands, and Arthur politely excuses himself, saying he is very tired after the fight. He walks away, but Lilia suddenly appears, following him. She comments that he is going the wrong way and asks him to follow her, promising to take him somewhere much better. Lilia leads him to the basement kitchen, where she begins chatting casually with the staff, asking for several meat dishes. An older woman working there comments that she should take it easy because she is gaining a few pounds. Lilia immediately snaps back, annoyed, saying that's not true, that she is just a healthy girl in a growth phase. Arthur watches everything, surprised. Until then, she seemed so quiet. One of the maids notices and explains that whenever she is stressed, Lilia goes there to eat. Arthur becomes curious and then finds out that, in truth, Lilia lives under pressure because her parents really want her to awaken as a mage. But since neither of them has any talent for magic, the chances of that happening are quite small. Later that night, Alice and Reynolds go to Arthur's room to talk a bit more. They say how happy they are to have him back, and that they are very proud of him. They also say they believe that one day he will become a great mage. They say good night and leave. But before going, Alice asks for a kiss on the cheek. The next day, as soon as he wakes up, Arthur runs to the living room because he finds out that some old friends are there to see him. They are his parents' former adventuring companions, known as the Twin Horns. They are very happy to see him again. Angela hugs Arthur so tightly that he can barely breathe. And right after that, he exchanges a handshake with Durden. Adam and Helen start arguing, as always, while welcoming him, and out of nowhere, Jasmine starts checking Arthur over, wanting to make sure he is really okay. As soon as she finishes, she hugs him, apologizes, and admits that she feels like all of this is her fault. After this emotional reunion, the group starts telling Arthur about the recent missions they carried out in distant places, and, as always, they end up arguing over trivial things. Watching everything, Arthur realizes that he still has a lot to learn about this world, and that being an adventurer is a great way to do so. But when he looks at his family, he feels that he is still not ready to be separated from them again. Sometime later, while Arthur was focused on his meditation, something incredible happened. Time simply froze around him, but it demanded a lot from him, and he could only maintain it for a few seconds before becoming completely exhausted. It was at that moment that Sylvie appeared, and just the fact that she was there, with all her cuteness, was already enough to give Arthur the push he needed to keep going. He couldn't resist and soon picked her up, hugging her tightly for always being by his side. However, it didn't take long for him to notice that she was smelling pretty bad. To be honest, without thinking twice, Arthur decided that she needed a good bath. He took Sylvie to the bathtub and placed her there, even though she made it very clear, with every attempt to escape, that she was not happy about it at all. While trying to calm her down, Arthur explained that, living in that luxurious Helstia house, they couldn't afford to look or be dirty. And speaking of the Helstias, something wouldn't leave his mind. The conversations he overheard from the maids, they mentioned that Vincent and Tabitha's greatest wish was to see Lilia awaken as a sorceress, even though they themselves were not mages. For now, Arthur turned his attention back to Sylvie, who was clearly complaining about having stayed in the water for so long. He took her out of the bathtub, dried her off, and even joked that she seemed lighter after the bath. Suddenly, Alice arrived with everyone and, without wasting time, announced that it was time for Arthur to get ready. She took him to the most flashy barber in town. As soon as he looked at him, the barber immediately said that Arthur was like a rough diamond, but assured him that he didn't need to worry because he would polish him and reveal all the shine hidden within him. When the service was finished, Arthur walked out of there looking like a completely different person. He looked simply incredible. Tabitha even commented, somewhat satisfied, that now he was presentable enough to enter their auction house. Alice then explained that the place often received members of royalty quite frequently, and that was exactly why they needed to take such good care of the boy's appearance before taking him there. Instead of feeling confident about all this, hearing those things only made Arthur feel even more uncomfortable, as if before that he had been terrible. Continuing the outing, Tabitha wanted to show the city of Xyrus to Arthur, and in that relaxed atmosphere, Eleanor, Arthur's little sister, joked, asking him to be her escort. Lilia, not letting that pass, quickly said that Eleanor used to cling to her before Arthur showed up. After that, looking at him, she admitted that he looked very handsome in those new clothes and, without meaning to, ended up revealing that she herself had chosen them before walking away. The group went to the market, where Alice took the opportunity to buy a bunch of new clothes for Arthur. After quite some time shopping, they stayed in the city center, having fun near the king's statue, until, out of nowhere, a group of students from the Xyrus Academy of Magic appeared and threw something at Arthur, full of attitude, as if they were better than everyone else. Arthur simply ignored it. He didn't want trouble, so they just left. Later, he learned from Lilia that those students were treated almost like members of royalty, all because they were mages. But honestly, Arthur wasn't interested in that at all. Continuing the outing, he suddenly felt a strange aura coming from a shop. Curious, he approached and came across several shelves filled with beast cores. Tabitha explained that those were magical cores extracted from beasts, used to greatly increase the strength of those who possessed them. Arthur already knew what they were, but had no idea they were sold in stores. That was not common at all in the Elven Kingdom. Tabitha continued explaining, saying that, in very rare cases, some cores possess a beastly will within them. This makes them absurdly expensive. Just to give an idea, the cheapest ones cost around 100 gold coins. According to Alice, that was enough to live for more than 200 years in the village where they used to live. Tabitha said that she and her husband were planning to put some of those cores in the next auction, and, noticing the interest in Arthur's eyes, she promised that she would let him take a look at the cores, which, according to her, was a huge honor. Arthur pretended to be excited, but deep down, he knew he was already more than satisfied with the beastly will he possessed. Suddenly, he noticed that Lilia had become downcast. Tabitha quickly realized the reason as well. In truth, Lilia really wanted one of those cores. It made sense, since her family dealt with that all the time, and she wanted to use one of them to try to awaken her mana. But Tabitha soon made it clear that things didn't work that way. And besides, spending that much money on a child didn't make any sense at all. Lilia still tried to insist, suggesting that they could look for a cheaper one somewhere else. Even so, Tabitha was firm and said they wouldn't discuss that anymore. After that, everyone went to a restaurant for lunch, but Arthur couldn't enjoy it, since Lilia was visibly sad. He understood very well what was going on with her. After all, her father, Vincent, placed a huge burden of expectations on her, and that was exactly why she was so determined to awaken her mana. Arthur wanted to help. After all, her family had done a lot for his, but when he looked around, he realized that she was no longer there. He went looking for her and ended up finding Lilia in a weapon shop. She was alone, trying to buy a cheap beast core using her savings. Arthur stopped her right away, saying that even if she bought one, it wouldn't make her awaken mana. Even so, Lilia didn't give up. She vented, saying how unfair it was to be a child without talent, unlike him, who was special, someone out of the ordinary. While they were arguing, Lilia accidentally bumped into one of the students from the Academy of Magic. Right away, she apologized, but the boy and two of his friends were not willing to let it go. They started threatening Lilia, saying that she deserved punishment for being, in their words, insolent. Not even the shop owner had the courage to intervene. Arthur, who was already ready to resolve that with magic, was interrupted right at the moment Tabitha walked in, immediately putting an end to the situation. She introduced herself and made it clear who she was, the head of the Helstia family. As soon as they found out who she was, the students gave up on causing more trouble. After all, the Helstia family made large donations to the academy and had considerable influence. Even so, they didn't miss the chance to provoke Lilia one more time before leaving. On the way back home, Tabitha and Alice told everything to Vincent. He was relieved that the situation ended before Arthur split the three of them in half. And even so, he took the opportunity to tell both Lilia and Arthur that they needed to be more careful from then on, especially Arthur, since he would soon start at the Xyrus Academy. When she heard that, Lilia felt terrible. In her mind, it seemed like Vincent was giving up on her and putting Arthur in her place, as if she were a bad investment. She was deeply shaken, and before they could say anything, she ran off, shouting that she hated both Arthur and Vincent. Despite that uncomfortable scene, Arthur didn't let it affect him. He knew that Lilia didn't really mean it. She was just hurt. Later, he went to her bedroom door to call her for dinner. He knocked several times, but no one answered. At that moment, Sylvie noticed a servant approaching and drew Arthur's attention. The man mentioned that Lilia was not in the room and then led Arthur to where she was. Meanwhile, Lilia was lost in her own thoughts. She thought about everything that had happened up until then and felt more and more certain that her parents were disappointed in her. She remembered when she was little and how her father always said he wanted to see her become a sorceress. Back then, all she wanted was to make them feel proud. But unfortunately, life didn't go the way she imagined. She wondered when, after all, her magic would awaken. She also remembered her mother's words, saying that she didn't need to rush, and how her father, even seeing her slow progress, never gave up, always assuring that he was making donations to the academy, and that, no matter when she awakened, she would be accepted. The problem was that hearing her father say the same things to Arthur, who had arrived such a short time ago, simply broke her heart. She felt like a failure. And to make matters worse, remembering the academy students saying that she would only get in by buying her place made everything even heavier. Arthur appeared, pulling her out of that whirlwind of thoughts. He said that her parents were very worried and cared deeply about her. He felt bad, believing that, in a way, he was also one of the reasons she was like that. For a moment, he even thought about apologizing, but realized it wouldn't help. Sometimes, apologies don't fix things, especially when, deep down, you know you didn't do anything wrong. Lilia understood that, and, to his surprise, she was the one who apologized first. She said she was sorry for the things she said, and that she didn't want to make him feel that way. She admitted that she had always felt frustrated for not being able to awaken magic, and that, when he appeared, with all that talent, she felt completely left behind. It even seemed like all of her father's attention had gone straight to him. Arthur explained that it wasn't quite like that. He gently touched her face, and she slowly began to smile. He said that, when he was separated from his parents, there was also a girl who always made him feel better. Then, he took the glowing flower that Tasha had shown him and showed it to Lilia, who was enchanted by it. Arthur said that Vincent was just excited, nothing more. It was a sign that he trusted her and believed in her potential. He knew that pretty words wouldn't be enough. If he really wanted to help, he needed to do something concrete. So he asked if she truly wanted to learn magic. Lilia confirmed without thinking twice. Later, Arthur said that he had sent Lilia to the place where he himself had learned magic. Vincent, as soon as he found out, became furious, even knowing that Arthur only wanted to help. He believed that, at the very least, Arthur should have asked for permission first. Arthur replied that it was her decision, and that, if they got involved, she might give up. He handed over the letter she had written, where she apologized, said she felt useless, and that she would only return after awakening, no matter how long it took. At that very moment, Vincent fell to his knees. That was when he realized how wrong he had been. For a long time, he had made her believe that being a sorceress was the only way to have a worthy future. And now, she believed that, without that, she had no value. Crying, he said that even if she never awakened magic, she would still be his beloved daughter and would always have value to them. Hearing this, Arthur called Lilia's name, asking if she could hear him. She appeared and revealed that it had all been a prank. In truth, she had never left. All of that had been Arthur's idea so that she could realize how important she was to her parents. She apologized for the prank, but Arthur took the blame, saying that he was the one who suggested it. After all, he knew very well how painful it is when a child disappears. He knew because his own parents had gone through that, and he assured that he would never joke about something like that again. Vincent, in the end, realized that he had let himself be carried away too much by the idea that being a mage was all that mattered. He apologized to Arthur for wanting him to go to the academy, even after having reunited with his parents so recently. Then he went to his daughter, hugged her together with Tabitha, and stated with absolute certainty that no matter what happened, she would always be his daughter and no longer needed to go to the academy if she didn't want to. Lilia smiled and replied that even so, she still wanted to become a mage and go to the academy, no matter how long it took. Now that that weight had been lifted from her shoulders, Arthur began preparing everything to help her awaken her magic. He asked Lilia and Elena to sit down and explained that breathing is one of the fastest ways to connect with mana. He asked them to close their eyes, take a deep breath, and pay attention, because they would soon see a light appearing in the darkness. And, just as he had imagined, Elena quickly commented that she had seen a light, but it disappeared quickly. He knew it was because she had stopped breathing properly, so he asked her to continue. Lilia, on the other hand, began to question why she wasn't seeing anything. Arthur approached, placed his hands on their backs, and tried to use his mana to create a connection. That was when Lilia suddenly began to see several glowing points. She said it looked very much like the flower he had shown before. Her parents, moved, were radiant with happiness. Right away, they started planning a party to celebrate that achievement. During the party, Arthur explained to Lilia that she would need to train for about 2 or 3 years until the energy stabilized. He said it would take effort, but that it was essential for her to dedicate herself every day. She became so excited that she asked, with a smile on her face, which element she would be able to use. Arthur just laughed, enjoying all that excitement. The scene shifts to Arthur arriving at the Helstia auction house. He is accompanied by Lilia, his sister Elena, Alice, and Tabitha. Alice comments, worried, whether her children will behave at that night's event, since members of royalty will be present. Tabitha, who is in charge of the situation, assures that everything is under control and that the children can relax and enjoy themselves as they wish. As soon as they enter, walking along the red carpet, Arthur feels a mix of excitement and anticipation at the chance to closely see aristocrats, nobles, and perhaps even adventurers from that world. To him, everyone there shares the same goal: to acquire rare and valuable items collected by Vincent and other hunters serving the Helstia auction house. While Lilia walks ahead with Elena, she begins showing some rare beast cores that will be auctioned later. Arthur, on the other hand, finds himself intrigued as he observes a strange statue, wondering what it could represent. Meanwhile, Reynolds, acting as the head of security at the event, gives clear instructions to his team to maintain maximum alert. Any failure that night would be unacceptable. Soon after, Vincent draws everyone's attention in the exhibition hall by announcing the arrival of the guest of honor of the night, King Blaine Glader. He appears accompanied by Queen Priscilla, Prince Curtis, and Princess Kathleen. As soon as they enter, the audience applauds enthusiastically, and Arthur, observing the general reaction, understands that the king is quite beloved by the people. The ceremony celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Helstia auction house then begins, led by Vincent. Arthur cannot help but feel a sense of nostalgia, recalling experiences from his past life. The first item to be auctioned is presented: a sword created by a famous blacksmith and enchanted with magic that paralyzes the enemy when it hits its target. The starting bid is 50 gold coins, but within minutes it rises to 100. Arthur watches everything and thinks that he needs to find a sword for himself in the future, and he considers using his own magical elements to enchant it once he finds a suitable one. The next item is a mask that, despite appearing simple, has a much higher value than the previous sword. Alice notices that Sylvie, Arthur's partner, is no longer in her lap. She mentions this to him, and he quickly remembers having seen Elena holding Sylvie not long before. Worried, he decides to look for her. While Arthur begins his search, Sylvie is already elsewhere, She got lost and ended up in a chamber where the king's royal conjurer is. Back in the exhibition hall, Vincent presents a cub of a world lion. It is a mana beast like Sylvie, and Vincent reveals that the animal is a rank, extremely powerful and worthy of being a royal pet. Curtis, the prince, is charmed by the little lion and asks his father to buy it. As expected, Blaine agrees. Vincent starts the bidding, encouraging the guests to make offers for the chance to tame such an extraordinary creature. Within seconds, the price reaches 500 gold coins. The king, calmly, offers 1,000, ending the dispute. No one dares to outbid him. Vincent congratulates him and invites him to the stage, asking what he intends to do with the animal. The king says he had planned to make it his companion, but since his son showed interest, he decided to give the beast to him. Curtis thanks him, saying he will strive to become a great tamer. His mother, however, teases him by asking if that means he will stop skipping classes, which leaves him slightly embarrassed in front of his father. Meanwhile, Arthur hears a faint sound that he recognizes as Sylvie crying. He runs toward where the sound is coming from and finds the royal conjurer handling her. Upon seeing the man's robes, Arthur realizes he is dealing with someone powerful. He avoids conflict and, calmly, apologizes before asking for Sylvie to be returned, explaining that she is his partner. The conjurer replies that he thought she was for sale and laments not being able to have her. Arthur senses the risk of letting the man's interest grow, so he quickly takes Sylvie, apologizes once more, and says he needs to leave. However, the conjurer prevents him from leaving, saying that he has long been searching for a beast like Sylvie and cannot allow Arthur to keep her. He claims he would be able to awaken her full potential and demands that she be handed over. To intimidate Arthur, he releases a fire spell. Arthur, however, shows no fear. He asks why he should hand over his partner, even to someone from royalty. The conjurer says it would be for the good of the kingdom, but Arthur ignores him and begins to walk away. Feeling disrespected, the conjurer threatens Arthur and his entire family. Arthur, who was once a king, does not accept being threatened. He turns around, releases his aura, and challenges the conjurer to repeat the threat if he dares. The power emanating from him shatters all the glass in the auction house, and the oppressive energy suffocates the people inside. The king, believing an enemy has invaded, orders his guards to find the one responsible. The conjurer, in turn, collapses to the ground speechless, overcome by fear. Arthur realizes what he has just done. He let his emotions slip, and now everyone is terrified. An event that was meant to be a simple celebration has turned into a disaster. Fortunately, no one in the main area knows that he was responsible. He apologizes quietly, and upon noticing that even Sylvie was frightened, he apologizes to her as well. The king calls Reynolds and asks if he is the head of security. Reynolds confirms. Since he failed to prevent the incident, the king considers punishing him. But before he makes any decision, Sebastian, the conjurer, intervenes, saying that the damage was not that severe and that it would be better to act with mercy. He also takes the opportunity to praise Sylvie, saying that he could take care of her in an ideal environment. Blaine agrees, reminding everyone that Sebastian has served faithfully for years. The king then asks if Reynolds can convince his son to hand over Sylvie. Before Reynolds can say anything, Arthur tries to speak, but no one pays attention. Alice even calls his name, pleading for him to stay quiet. Reynolds states that he was not the one who obtained the beast, so he has no right to order him to give her up. The king then decides to ask Arthur directly. He makes the request once, and Arthur refuses. The second time, he offers the lion he had purchased as a trade. Even so, Arthur makes it clear that he does not want to sell, trade, or give away Sylvie. The king is surprised by the refusal and asks if Arthur will say no for the third time. This irritates Arthur even more, and he stands up and asks how much the king would charge for his own son. He reminds the king that he has already made it clear that Sylvie is not for sale. There is nothing they can offer that would make him change his mind. He questions whether the king would also sell his children and what their price would be. Sebastian becomes furious. Not only did he lose what he wanted, but he was also confronted by a child. He orders the knights to capture Arthur, but as they approach, they are easily repelled. Still underestimating Arthur, Sebastian complains about the soldier's weakness and prepares to attack with magic. Before he can cast any spell, Arthur freezes the entire building. Everyone is immobilized except him and Sebastian. Arthur approaches. Sebastian tries to threaten him, saying he will be punished for his actions. With just a glance from Arthur, Sebastian's leg breaks instantly. He then uses his beast will to send a message that this was a warning. Sebastian, terrified, cannot believe the strength of that boy. When Arthur finishes, he unfreezes everyone. But the effort was so great that he faints on the spot. A few days later, Arthur wakes up. He understands that he froze time for a few seconds, but it came at a cost. He is still not strong enough to handle that kind of power. He wonders what happened after the event. Coincidentally, Alice enters the room and, upon seeing him awake, becomes emotional. She quickly asks if he is okay. He answers that he is, but wants to know how everything ended. She tells him that they tried to revive him and that the doctors said he would wake up soon. Even so, she could not stay calm. She had already lost him once and could not bear to go through that again. Arthur understands that he hurt her once more and apologizes. She takes him out for a walk. As she was heading to the market, she hesitates, wondering if he is strong enough. But Arthur assures her that he is. During the walk, they come across a brooch that Alice believes Elena will love, so they decide to buy it. She asks if Arthur wants anything else, but he worries about her money. Alice assures him that everything is fine, that she also has her own resources. She mentions that her products are successful, and that even nobles have started to take interest thanks to Tabitha's help. She buys several things for him, and the two return home carrying bags everywhere. When they arrive, they notice that Reynolds is receiving a visitor. Arthur comes across his father's friends at the door, who try to stop him from entering, but he goes in anyway. He discovers that the king sent a representative with money as a way to apologize. Reynolds, however, does not accept it easily. He says that what happened was far too serious and that he almost lost his son. Arthur decides to interfere and asks what exactly the king said. The man replies that the king believes everything was exaggerated. Arthur feels that they are trying to reverse the roles and portray themselves as victims. He asks about the knights who attacked him. The man says they were dismissed. When he asks about Sebastian, he hears that he was also removed. And regarding the broken leg, the man states that Sebastian continues to say that Arthur was responsible. But since no one saw it, they cannot believe him. The man concludes by saying that all of this happened because of Arthur's attitude toward royalty, and that the king mentioned Reynolds' failure in security. Upon hearing this, Arthur recognizes that he also overreacted and decides to accept the apology. The man leaves, and Reynolds surprises his son by handing the money to him, saying that he was the one who was hurt and that, therefore, he deserves it. He insists that Arthur keep the amount, as he will need it when he wants to start something on his own. It is a remarkable moment between father and son, so moving that even Adam and Durden end up crying. Later that night, Arthur becomes thoughtful. Everything that happened made him realize that, in that world, he is still just a boy. If he wants to have the authority he desires, he needs to become stronger. The next morning, he heads to the academy, but on the way, he sees a different bird. He follows it until, suddenly, a strange woman appears and calls him by name, as if she already knew him. She says she has been waiting for him. Arthur knew very well the reputation of Xyrus Academy. It was recognized for producing great scholars, successful entrepreneurs, royal guards, leaders, and military officers. It was the dream of any child born with the gift of magic. And now, he found himself standing before the academy's director, a woman who exuded power. She welcomed him with a smile and said it was a pleasure to finally meet him. Then, she explained that the time had come to find out whether everything she had heard about him was true. Arthur watched as she surrounded them with a protective barrier. Her aura was intense, and he could feel all the magical pressure she emanated. But now it was his turn to respond. He needed to show a bit of what he was capable of. Only then would she believe that Vincent hadn't exaggerated in his words. Using wind magic, Arthur conjured massive rocks and hurled them in her direction. But the director remained unfazed, as if it were a mere detail. Then he tried something different. He attacked with daggers made of earth. Once again, she defended herself with ease. Finally, he reinforced his body with fire magic and charged into direct combat, but ended up being thrown away. Even so, she seemed satisfied. She said she was impressed with his abilities, despite him relying too much on himself. Vincent was right. Arthur was indeed talented, both in the use of magic and in combat. But there was still one final step left. The director asked him to make an effort to remain conscious, and began using sound magic to render him unconscious. Arthur was surprised he hadn't imagined she was a special mage, since sound was a rare element. When the test came to an end, she congratulated him. She said he had passed, that his talent was out of the ordinary, and that, because of that, she herself wanted to teach him to master wind magic. Even so, she made it clear that she could tell he was hiding something. Arthur then revealed that he could also control the water element. That made him a quadra-elemental mage. The director, surprised, wanted to know what else he had to say. She felt that Arthur wasn't there just to show his powers. He confirmed it. He wanted her to use her authority to protect his family, and in exchange, he promised to enroll at Xyrus Academy and accept her as his mentor. That proposal caught the director off guard. Not even the rulers of Sapin would have dared to ask for something like that. But Arthur assured her it was worth it, and believed she agreed with him. Even so, he said he would only enter the academy when he was the same age as the other students. There was still some time before that, but he didn't want to waste those years. He planned to become an adventurer and learn more about the world he lived in. He was determined to use that period to gain field experience. The director understood that he had already made his decision and warned that, if he managed to convince his family, they would have a deal. The scene shifts to Arthur's house. His mother, Alice, was completely against the idea. She didn't want her son to become an adventurer so soon, especially after having him back. Just thinking about seeing him in danger again made her heart tighten. Reynolds tried to calm her down, but Alice asked how he could stay calm, knowing everything they had already gone through, believing Arthur was dead. Even so, Reynolds asked her to listen to what their son had to say. In addition, he suggested that Arthur have a guardian while he was away. Alice remained firm in her position, until Arthur himself intervened. He explained that this wasn't just any adventure. He wanted to know the world, learn more about everything, and would return home from time to time to reassure her. She demanded that he promise this, and he did. He also said he wouldn't leave immediately. He wanted to spend some time with them before departing. But if he was determined to explore Dicathen, it was because he wanted to understand more about that continent and feel the same excitement his parents felt when they were adventurers. Alice understood, but asked him not to hide anything anymore. After all, they had only recently discovered that he was a quadra elemental. Arthur promised he would do his best to be honest, although he knew not everything could be said. Reynolds then agreed that Arthur could go ahead with his plan, but on the condition that he had someone strong by his side. That's how they sought out the members of the Twin Horns, trying to decide who would be the ideal guardian. After some discussions, Jasmine volunteered to protect him, surprising everyone, since she didn't usually accept this kind of job. But since it was Arthur, she was willing. Reynolds was satisfied. Although he had considered Helen or Durden, he recognized that Jasmine was the right choice. Her combat skills made her the perfect protector. Alice wanted to know if Jasmine was sure about her decision, and she replied positively. Everything was settled. In addition, Jasmine had reached the light orange level the previous year and mastered wind magic, which made her even more suitable. With everything resolved, they said goodbye to the Twin Horns. On their way back, Arthur noticed that Lilia was meditating. Elena scolded her for training without her. Arthur was happy to see that Lilia could now meditate on her own. However, he worried about his sister. He hoped she wouldn't awaken her mana too soon. He didn't want her to draw too much attention. Shortly after, he asked his parents to stop by the auction house. He needed a sword. Next, Arthur met Vincent at the warehouse. He let him freely choose the weapon he liked the most. Meanwhile, Alice was impatient, worried about her son's delay. Reynolds suggested that she be patient. Maybe he was just being careful with his choice. In fact, Arthur was having difficulty. There were many swords, but none seemed ideal. All of them were too big, designed for adults who used magical amplification. None fit well with his small body. That was when Sylvie caught his attention and guided him to a small staff. As he held it, he felt its unbalanced weight. It didn't seem like an ordinary staff. He tried to pull out the blade, but couldn't. As he channeled his elemental energy, Sylvie's mark reacted. He saw strange inscriptions and then managed to draw the sword. It was beautiful, but still very heavy. Even so, he decided to test it and cut a barrel in half. Upon seeing the engraving on the blade, it released sparks, causing him to drop it. When he held it again, he noticed that the weight and balance had changed. Now, both the hilt and the blade seemed custom-made. Arthur had wielded excellent swords in his past life, but none fit so perfectly. To test it further, he cut another barrel and wondered who WK4 was, the blacksmith who created that weapon. Soon after, his father and Vincent showed up to take him to dinner. Arthur picked up another ordinary sword and said he wanted to take that one, but kept the mysterious one strapped to his waist. Reynolds approved of the choice. Vincent noticed the staff on his waist and asked about it. Arthur said he had found it and decided to keep it to use in his training. The person in charge of the warehouse said that an old man had left it there, claiming that no one was worthy of that weapon. Several appraisers had already examined it, but all of them stated it was just a sturdy staff. Feeling reluctant to throw it away, he kept it. The employee suggested taking it to someone more experienced, which put Arthur on alert. Trying to appear innocent, he called Vincent uncle and said he really liked the staff and wanted to use it. That convinced Vincent, who dropped the subject. Time passed. Arthur enjoyed the days with his family, gradually preparing to become an adventurer. Now, he was celebrating his 9th birthday. It was time to open the presents. From his mother, he received a pair of gloves with gems that could cast healing spells. From Vincent, he received a ring. Tabitha told him to stop joking when he asked Arthur to marry him, but he soon explained that the ring came as a pair. The other one was for Alice. If Arthur's mana dropped to a critical level, his mother's ring would alert her by lighting up the gem. The twin horns gave him a magical scroll that transmitted sounds. Arthur could leave a message, and his mother would receive it and respond using mana. He thanked them for the gifts, saying he would use them all very carefully. As he would soon depart, he assured them he would do everything possible not to worry them. Later, in his room, while packing his things, he thought about how his life had changed. Now he had a family, people he loved, and he wanted to protect them. He knew he needed to become stronger. As he said goodbye, his father reminded him that he was strong, but shouldn't carry everything alone. He advised him to trust Jasmine and accept help. His parents assured him they would always be by his side. And then, as he left the house, Arthur turned to Jasmine and said it was time to begin his adventure. Arthur and Jasmine head together to the Adventurers Guild to officially register Arthur as one of them. Jasmine, already experienced as an adventurer, personally assures the guild receptionist that Arthur has potential and insists that he be allowed to take the rank evaluation test. She does not reveal his real name, and Arthur also takes care to keep his face covered with a mask. As the receptionist guides them to another room, Arthur brings his hand to his mask, reflecting on why he is hiding his face. He didn't want the royal family to discover his identity, nor his powers. The idea that they could hurt his family because of it was something he could not accept. He was certain that he needed to keep all of this a secret at any cost. Soon, the three of them arrive at the guild master's office, Caspian. There, Caspian explains to Jasmine that there are some mandatory rules. Anyone who wants to become an adventurer must first pass a written exam and have their mana core evaluated before attempting the rank test. But since Jasmine holds a rank within the guild and is personally requesting the exception, Caspian agrees to make an exception just this once. However, he leans in and whispers something in Jasmine's ear about her father, with an intention that immediately makes her serious. Even so, she remains silent. With that settled, Caspian turns to Arthur and asks what name he would like to use, since he left the form blank. Arthur thinks for a few seconds and then answers that he wants to be called Note. They shake hands, and at that moment Caspian releases a wave of mana through the touch. Sensing Arthur's hidden strength, the guild master realizes that there is something different about him. Even so, he respects Jasmine's reasons for keeping the boy's identity a secret and allows them to enter the arena for the test. On the way, Arthur asks if Jasmine is friends with the guild master. She answers directly, saying no, that they only know each other because her father has strong ties with the guild. Suddenly, Sylvie comes out of Arthur's bag, wanting to get some air. Jasmine is surprised to notice that Sylvie looks different. Arthur explains that his partner has the ability to slightly change her form. Leaving that aside, they finally enter the arena, where several novices are already taking the test, fighting against the guild instructor. A young conjurer named Diane is currently in combat. She manages to cast a well-executed spell, but due to her lack of practical battle experience, she ends up receiving a C rank, which, according to Jasmine, is still considered a good result. Then, it is Elijah's turn, but even before he begins the test, the person in charge of the announcement speaks with the instructors and declares that he has passed with a B rank. The audience is confused. No one understands what is happening. How could someone be ranked without even taking part in the fight? For now, no one explains. Soon after, the name Lucas Wikes is called. Seeing how Elijah was favored, he demands to be treated the same way. He wants to skip the test and receive a rank directly. The instructor introduces him to the audience, explaining that he is an 11-year-old conjurer specialized in fire magic. His mana core has already reached the light orange level, something impressive for his age. In addition, he has pointed ears, which immediately makes Arthur think of Tesha. Lucas seems bored with the formalities and, without hesitation, summons his flame guardian to attack the instructor. She reacts quickly, using earth magic to create a protective wall. But Lucas is fast. He plants his staff into the ground and summons a rain of fire over the arena. He smiles, thinking himself superior, but fails to notice that he has lost control of his own spell and that the entire arena is about to be consumed by flames. Before disaster can strike, the instructor takes control of the situation and prevents the worst. Even acknowledging the danger of his actions, she admits that Lucas has demonstrated great skill by managing to cast such an advanced spell. However, before she could announce his final rank, Lucas attempts to attack her by surprise. He wanted to defeat her by force to secure a better classification. Arthur, realizing that he would probably receive a lower rank for losing control, reacts immediately. He throws his sword to deflect the attack and protect the instructor. The quick action impresses her, and because of that, she grants Lucas a B rank. Right after, she summons an arm of earth that grabs Lucas and carries him out of the arena. Then it is Arthur's turn, or rather, note, Jasmine and Sylvie support him, wishing him luck. With both of them by his side, Arthur enters the arena with no intention of holding back. He releases his aura, which had been hidden until then. From the top of the stands, Caspian senses the power and decides that he will conduct the test personally. He is an A-rank mage. But even in the face of that, Arthur shows no sign of hesitation. The fight between the two begins, and soon the battle ends with the sound of swords echoing, and time advances to the moment when Arthur finally receives his adventurer card, already classified as a B rank. Meanwhile, in Caspian's office, the two instructors responsible for the evaluation do not hide their discomfort and demand explanations. They were dissatisfied with the fact that so many children had received a B rank. Caspian, however, reminds them that 6 months ago, the first cultural exchange between the three races took place, which opened the way for young elves and dwarves to also register as adventurers. About Lucas, he comments that he is a half-elf, born into a human family, but that there are old rumors involving that family whispers about questionable practices to produce children with great magical talent. Elijah, on the other hand, is human, but was raised in the Dwarven Kingdom. His registration as an adventurer was only possible thanks to the support of a powerful sponsor. And as for note, no one knows exactly who he is. The only reason he managed to receive special treatment is because he has Jasmine as his sponsor. She comes from the Flamesworth family, known as the most powerful lineage of fire mages in the kingdom. One of the instructors suspects that this explains why Note can cast such advanced fire spells. Even so, what truly catches Caspian's attention is the way he handles the sword. Caspian comments that Note's technique is still a bit raw, lacking refinement probably because his body is growing faster than his technique can keep up. But even with that flaw, he was bold enough to truly face him. Caspian finds himself thinking about how that boy could become incredibly strong in the future. Arthur, on the other hand, is immersed in his own thoughts, trying to process everything he experienced that day. He does not feel worried, but knows there is much to consider. Jasmine soon notices that he is distracted and calls him back to reality. He simply says that everything is fine, that it was nothing serious, but the truth is that the fight against Caspian made him realize something important. He had grown too accustomed to the power he possessed in this world and had ended up neglecting the discipline and focus that had made him strong in his previous life. As they walk through the guild, they run into Elijah along the way. He does not greet them. Instead, he gets straight to the point. He criticizes the way Arthur acted in the arena against Lucas. Even so, he admits that if Arthur hadn't interfered, he himself would have. Shortly after, Lucas approaches and provokes them, asking if that was some kind of meeting between B-rank adventurers that he hadn't been informed about. Arthur responds directly, saying that he does not usually invite those who do not respect the rules. Irritated, Lucas grabs Arthur by the shirt, ready to fight. Elijah tries to calm things down, reminding him that they are drawing too much attention. Lucas realizes this, lets Arthur go, and walks away without saying anything else. With the group dispersed and nothing urgent to do, Jasmine suggests they go out for a bit. Arthur asks where they are going. Jasmine, however, already had a destination in mind. Without delay, they use a teleportation portal and head straight to the place she had chosen. Upon arriving, Arthur finds himself facing an open field, a type of area where magical beasts are usually found. Jasmine explains that the place was recently cleared by hunters and now serves as a training area for beginners. Arthur comments that it seems like a waste to train in a place without challenges. But Jasmine soon says that the real destination is still ahead and that it would take some time to get there. She starts running with ease, and Arthur realizes he needs to push himself to keep up with her. In silence, he acknowledges that he underestimated her endurance. Jasmine is not only skilled, she is also very physically resilient. Arthur reflects that he has been making several mistakes that day, and one of them was not paying proper attention to that. Remembering the fight against Caspian, Arthur realizes that he had misinterpreted everything. He thought Caspian was forcing the pace of the fight to make him use his trump card, but when he decided to resort to magic, he miscalculated and lost. At that moment, Caspian had told him not to act arrogantly, a piece of advice that kept echoing in his mind. Suddenly, the two witness a horrifying scene. A massive beast appears and devours a person right in front of them. Jasmine shouts, warning that they need to run, since that monster is clearly not native to the region. A little further ahead, they realize that the beast had been captured by a group of adventurers, but escaped and is now attacking them ferociously. Since the monster was not from that territory, it was not there to hunt. But unfortunately, it ends up taking Arthur and Jasmine as new targets. Without hesitation, Jasmine says she will face it alone and tells Arthur to stay back. She draws two daggers and charges into the attack. Her first strikes do not have much effect, so she uses the trunk of a tree as leverage to attempt another attack this time. She only manages to scratch the creature. Arthur sees that she is in danger and runs toward her, picking her up in his arms to get her out of there. The beast then shifts its focus and begins attacking the injured adventurers nearby. Jasmine runs to protect them, placing herself between them and the monster. Arthur also prepares to fight, but at that moment, he hears the voice of his former self in his mind saying, "Not yet." He decides to wait. He waits for the exact moment to act. When he sees the opening, he advances with his magic sword, enveloping it with fire magic, and attacks with a precise combination of strikes. The creature is defeated without much difficulty. With everything settled, Jasmine approaches, holds Arthur's face with one hand, and pinches his cheek, complaining that in moments like that, he could show more concern instead of seeming so calm, as if he were an adult dealing with something ordinary. Later, still that night, Jasmine begins to open up. She talks about her story and the reason she became an adventurer. She wanted to distance herself from her own family. The Flamesworth family is known for having incredibly powerful fire mages. When Jasmine awakened her powers very early, everyone was excited, full of pride and expectations. But that pride didn't last long. Over time, they realized that she couldn't use the fire element, and it was as if, from one moment to the next, she lost her value. She began to be treated as if she were useless. Arthur listens to everything and feels a growing anger. He can't hold back his voice and blurts out what he thinks. He says that no type of magic is superior to another, that what truly matters is how it is used. Jasmine lets out a small laugh and asks why he got so bothered by that. Only then does Arthur realize the reason he reacted that way. He saw himself in her. He had also been called useless in his previous life. Jasmine speaks again. She says that when she first started fighting, she had a style very similar to what Arthur showed that day. Because of that, she received several scoldings from the Twin Horns group. But little by little, she learned to work as part of a team. Thinking about it, she realizes that much of who she is today is thanks to them. She then asks about him, wanting to know more. But Arthur doesn't have a clear answer. And before the silence stretches on, Jasmine ends up falling asleep. He watches her in silence, immersed in thoughts about himself. Could he also change like she did? He begins to reflect on everything that has changed since he arrived in that world. He remembers his parents, the friends he made, Tesha, Elinor, and so many other moments that marked his journey up to that point. Thinking about all of this, he feels that he can indeed change. He wants to believe in that with all his strength. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Tesha watches him through a crystal ball. She sees that he is accompanied by a woman. On impulse, she tries to reach him through the magical surface, but the attempt leads nowhere. She gets irritated. It wasn't the first time she had seen Arthur surrounded by women. Virian notices his granddaughter's behavior and asks if she is jealous of Arthur for following a new path. Then, he suggests that she also make an important decision and start something new, like enrolling in Xyrus Academy. With that, she would have the chance to meet Arthur again, and just that idea already leaves Tesha visibly excited. Time passes. 2 years go by. Arthur continues his travels alongside Jasmine. During this period, he ends up gaining some fame and becomes known as the Masked Swordsman. On a late afternoon, he is sitting on a rooftop, calm, watching the horizon. When Jasmine calls him, it was time to move on. A new mission awaited them. After some time, the group is dropped off near the mission location. The task was to investigate the loss of contact with a village near the Beast Outpost. Jasmine asks what the priority would be, and Arthur responds that the most important thing was to ensure their safety. Then, she asks what they should do if they encountered a hostile monster, and Arthur explains that the mission did not involve combat, so the best option would be to retreat. Arthur then communicates telepathically with Sylvie, asking what she intended to do. The little one replies that she would stay nearby training. As they move forward, they notice several footprints heading toward the village, but almost none coming out. Because of this, Note concludes that they need to gather information before acting. So, they proceed silently to the location, but upon arrival, they find no sign of the villagers. Jasmine notices some crystals scattered around and calls Note to check them. Upon analyzing them, they discover something terrifying. The villagers were trapped inside those crystals. Note identifies a girl and approaches, trying to understand what had happened. The girl explains that she also didn't know, as she had been gathering herbs in the forest, and when she returned, everyone was already in that situation. Suddenly, a strand of web pulls the girl. Note tries to react, but Jasmine stops him. Then, the creature turns the girl into a crystal. As soon as they realize they have also become targets, Jasmine states that they need to flee immediately. The scene shifts to two hooded figures talking. They comment that the alliance between dwarves, humans, and elves was becoming a problem, which is why they had interfered with the Beast Outpost. Elsewhere, now away from the immediate danger, Jasmine explains that that creature was an Arachne. She reveals that she had already faced 5 of them, but only managed to win once. This was only possible thanks to teamwork, especially due to the help of Arthur's mother, who has emitter abilities. According to Jasmine, only emitters can undo an Arachne's curse. Without that, the only alternative is to defeat the creature. She also explains that these creatures have high resistance and are barely affected by magic. Additionally, something strange draws attention. Arachne hates sunlight and usually live deep within dungeons. Jasmine comments that she has already taught Arthur everything she knew about being an adventurer, and then asks what the next step would be. Arthur decides that the best option would be to retreat, go to the guild, and return with what is necessary to save the village. Jasmine agrees, but at that moment the Arachne appears behind them. While trying to protect Arthur, Jasmine ends up being struck by the creature's curse. Arthur remembers everything he has gone through since arriving in that world and charges into battle. He tries to use his sword skills from his past life, but his attacks have no effect. Then, he uses his mana core to envelop his blades with fire, but still cannot injure the monster. With no other option, Arthur changes strategy and uses earth magic, managing to create cracks in the Arachne's armor. Taking advantage of this opening, he drives his sword into the gap and channels lightning magic, striking the creature from the inside. In this way, he manages to bring the monster down. However, as he turns his back, the Arachne rises again. At that moment, Arthur activates his ability to stop time. In his thoughts, he acknowledges that, thanks to that enemy, he managed to regain his former swordsmanship. With that, he finishes the creature once and for all. Exhausted, Arthur lies down on the ground. Soon after, Sylvie appears flying toward him, as she had sensed that he was in danger. Arthur reassures the little one, saying that everything was now under control. Jasmine approaches, still affected by the situation, and shows some dissatisfaction, since he did not follow the plan to retreat. Arthur apologizes, explaining that he was carried away by the emotions of the moment. Jasmine replies that it's fine, as long as he has understood the mistake. She is also surprised that he managed to defeat the Arachne alone, but asks him not to put himself at risk for her again, reminding him that his family would be devastated if something happened. Arthur responds that that wouldn't be possible, because she was already someone important to him. Upon hearing this, Jasmine becomes visibly embarrassed and comments that he was getting more and more skilled with words. In the end, she thanks him for saving her. At that moment, Arthur remembers that they should retrieve the Arachne's core. However, Sylvie had already devoured the item. Back in the village, the residents express their gratitude for what was done. The scene shifts to the Adventurers Guild. Note talks with Elijah about the creature he defeated. Shortly after, Lucas approaches and questions whether it was true that he had defeated an Arachne. Asking for proof, Note explains that he cannot show the core. After all, he can't say that Sylvie ate it. This makes Lucas doubt even more, until Note presents the creature's head as evidence. Even so, Lucas tries to act superior, stating that a beast of that level would not be a challenge for him. Faced with this, Note responds ironically that, next time, he would ask for help. After that, Lucas leaves. Jasmine then stands up and says that it was already time to return. The next day, Arthur returns home and is welcomed by his sister. Already seated on the couch, he comments that he faced and defeated an Arachne, leaving his father impressed. However, his mother makes him kneel beside Jasmine and begins to question why he got involved with such a dangerous monster. She also asks Jasmine why they didn't run away, since facing an Arachne is never the safest choice. Jasmine simply apologizes. Alice explains that she only allowed Arthur to become an adventurer because she trusted that Jasmine would be by his side. But she still has difficulty believing what happened. His father advises that, next time, he should follow Jasmine's guidance, and Arthur agrees. Jasmine mentions that she has already requested an investigation from the guild regarding the unusual appearance of the Arachne. Reynolds thanks her and says that he will warn Helen and the others to stay alert. Reynolds then asks Alice to change her attitude, saying that they should be proud of Arthur, not for having defeated an Arachne, but for having returned safely. Alice agrees with this. After that, Arthur and Jasmine go outside to train. His mother watches, impressed by how much he had improved. Arthur thinks that he needed to become even stronger to protect the people who were important to him. When the training ends, he remembers Tesha and starts to wonder what she might be doing at that moment. The scene shifts to Tesha and other elves, who were fleeing from a trap with a huge boulder rolling toward them. The scene shifts to Tesha and her group inside a tavern, where they talk about their next mission. Their objective is to go to a human village to defeat a boar monster. As soon as they finish getting ready to leave, they are interrupted by humans who try to ambush them. Even so, Tesha's group shows that they are already used to this kind of situation. While running to escape, the girls comment among themselves that humans like that always show up. Further ahead, they manage to climb onto a carriage passing along the road and continue their journey. During the trip, Tesha begins reading a letter sent by her grandfather. In the letter, he explains that elves, humans, and dwarves spent a long time in conflict. However, at that moment, bandits appear chasing the carriage, but Tesha's group and the human passengers quickly deal with the bandits. The letter continues being narrated, explaining that although the alliance between the three kingdoms put an end to the wars, it was still only a political agreement, since in people's hearts the conflict still existed. As long as that feeling did not disappear, the alliance would never be true. At night, they are attacked by bandits again, but quickly get rid of them. However, suddenly, Tesha and her group are attacked by the group of humans, but Tesha takes care of them very easily. Finally, her grandfather's letter mentions that he wished for Tesha to become an example capable of changing people's views. Meanwhile, a hooded figure watches Tesha's every move from a distance. Back to the young elf, she decides to free the wolves pulling the carriage and continues the journey on her own. When morning arrives, the group finally reaches the village. But the village chief refuses their help just because Tesha is an elf, ordering them to leave. The scene then shifts to Lucas Wykes, who questions Elijah about why a human is involved with the dwarves' royal family. Elijah replies that there are several reasons for that and takes the opportunity to comment on Lucas's elven blood. The young man responds that, for the Wykes family, the most important thing is to raise powerful mages. At that moment, Note joins the conversation and states that the Wykes family would even be willing to get involved with elves, even though they are considered enemies. Lucas declares that he will use his half-elf side to become the most powerful mage on the entire continent of Dicathen. Note simply shows that he understands and wishes him good luck, which ends up irritating Lucas. Then, Note comments that Lucas's goals are different from his, as he no longer seeks to be the strongest. Soon after, he goes to Jasmine to discuss the details of the next mission. The story returns to Tesha, who tries to talk to the villagers but does not receive much of a response. When she is already tired and discouraged, two children approach her. They say that the boar usually appears from the eastern side. Via questions why they told her that, and the girl explains that the monster is a problem for everyone there. Meanwhile, the hooded figures continue watching Tesha and talk among themselves, saying that she will be the next target. They show no personal interest in her, but point out that, as the princess of the kingdom of Alenoir, her death could be enough to destroy the alliance between the three kingdoms. For that reason, they claim they have prepared something special for her. Suddenly, a gigantic boar appears in front of Tesha and the group. They dodge the attack and use elemental magic to try to defeat the creature. For a moment, they believe they have succeeded, but the monster charges again as if nothing had happened. Tesha uses magic again and realizes that, for some reason, the boar is immune to magical attacks. Because of this, Tesha and Vaya start running away. The hooded figures watch the situation and comment among themselves about what would happen if the princess died in human territory. Meanwhile, Tesha and Vaya keep dodging the monster's attacks until a piece of rock hits Vaya, putting her in danger. At that moment, Faye appears and helps her using water magic. Faye and Vaya suggest that they should retreat, but Tesha insists on trying one more strategy. Following her plan, Faye draws the boar's attention and leads it to a specific spot, while Vaya uses her magic to open a hole in the ground. With the monster trapped, Tesha uses wind magic to lift rocks and throw them at it. Exhausted and with their mana almost depleted, they believe they have won, but the boar gets up once again. Tesha then uses the rest of her energy to help Faye and Vaya reach the top of a cliff. Then, Faye also uses what little mana she has left to bring Tesha up there, leaving everyone out of the creature's reach. Faye suggests retreating again, but Tesha refuses to give up. She remembers Arthur's teachings and begins gathering mana from nature. When the boar charges again, Tesha rushes toward it and, using a direct strike with her strengthened body, manages to defeat the monster once and for all. Watching everything, the hooded figures are surprised and conclude that she used body enhancement, deciding that next time they will need an even more powerful mana beast. After that, Tesha informs the village chief that the monster has been defeated. But the man simply walks away without showing any gratitude. As the group prepares to leave, the children appear again and thank them for the help. Tesha comments that their house is beautiful, and the boy explains that the previous residents moved to a distant place, adding that they were very strong. It becomes clear that this is the same house where Arthur lived when he was younger. Later, the group is once again in a tavern. Tesha comments that she and Faye intend to return to Xyrus and asks what Vaya's destination will be. The girl replies that she had planned to return to Elenoir, but decided to go to Xyrus to take the opportunity to see Arthur. Tesha shows surprise upon realizing that Vaya knows Arthur, and the girl explains that she met him during the trip to Xyrus, mentioning that they sometimes meet. She also comments on how good the food prepared by Arthur's mother is and how beautiful his sister is. Upon hearing this, Tesha feels somewhat uncomfortable, since it has been quite some time since she last saw Arthur and she did not even know he was in Xyrus. The scene shifts once more, showing Tesha standing in front of Arthur's house. She hesitates, not knowing how to act when she finally meets him. At that moment, Alice and Lilia appear, and Alice asks what she wants. Unable to answer, Tesha ends up running away, overcome with embarrassment, while thinking to herself about where Arthur might be. And so we finish the 14th episode of the anime, The Beginning After the End. If you want the continuation of the next episodes, leave it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the next videos. See you next time.